join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air. And they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course, Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike. Just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ at or near lows of the day. Right now, looking at a 40-point drop in the S&P 500 index, down 1.4%. U.S., also European stocks slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that reflected the coronavirus's toll on businesses. The Dow Jones Industrial Average now down 383 points, down 1.6%. NASDAQ is down 75 after yesterday's surge, dropping 0.8%. We've got the 10-year up 8.30 seconds. The yield 0.59%. Gold down 1.7%, 16.84 the ounce. Crude surging today by 13.6%, up $2 a barrel now at 17.11. Recapping, S&P lower by 40, down 1.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues, the Thursday edition. Once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Jobless claims numbers out today took the total for the United States up to 30 million out of work in just 6 weeks. But at the same time, there's an awful lot of work to be done as we adjust to this new world. Craig Fugate has spent a career in disaster relief and recovery, starting as an EMT and working his way up through Florida state emergency agencies until he ultimately took the top federal job as head of FEMA under President Obama. A tenure that included presiding over a record 87 declared emergencies in the year 2011 alone. And we welcome him now to Bloomberg. So, Mr. Fugate, thank you so much for being with us. And I'm particularly eager to hear about your plan. You've written about it now, called, I think, the National Resilience Corps. What is it?
Well, you take these really big disasters we've been seeing, and one of the big challenges is after that disaster is putting the workforce together to start rebuilding. It's a delay. It takes time. In many cases, we're missing the opportunity not only to build back what was damaged, but to build back better. So the idea was looking at how we could build a deployable workforce to get into areas quickly after disasters, make repairs, get communities started, and then allow the more traditional construction industries take over. And with COVID-19, we're seeing increasingly the need for a deployable workforce. If one of the things that's really coming out of this is the need to augment healthcare, particularly in contact tracing, if we want to move away from stay-at-home orders to starting to reopen our economy.
So if you were czar, you could do whatever you want. How many people would you have in this corps?
Well, initially we were thinking for responding after disasters, I'd like to have at least 10 to 20,000 people that you could deploy ready to go. But with COVID-19, we're probably seeing numbers up to maybe 100,000 or more across all the states just to support contact tracing, which will be something that will be needed until we have effective vaccines.
Yeah, we've had people on who've estimated between 100 and 300,000 people would be needed across the country to do the contact tracing. Would these people be full-time employees? I mean, because there'd be some surge need, I assume. You'd need more of them sometimes than others, right?
Yeah, and this is really coming from my experience at FEMA. FEMA has some unique hiring authorities that Congress gave them to deal with disasters. It allows them to hire people that are full-time but are not considered permanent employees. They would work full-time for the duration of the crisis, and then they would transition back as the economy picked up in other jobs. Unlike career federal service, these folks would have benefits. They would be full-time, but it would be tied to the duration of the crisis. So like contact tracing, we see the need for several years, but with a vaccine, that need would then diminish.
And how much, do you have any sense of how much this would cost? I mean, as I understand it, FEMA, I did not know this before, has something called CORE, C-O-R-E. It's Cadre on Call and Response Recovery Employees. I didn't know that. You have something of a small version of this already?
Yeah, this is something, and this goes back to FEMA's hiring authorities. The permanent FEMA workforce is only around 5,000. Majority of the people you hear or see in disasters are actually either our disaster workers who work as needed or corps who are full-time but are tied to the disaster workload. So this would expand that, and it really goes back to the total cost would depend upon the salary ranges for positions. Within corps, we have entry-level jobs all the way up to people that lead technical aspects that are well paid and are probably up in the GS-12, the GS-15 ranges. But it's really based upon the position, and because FEMA has its hiring authority, it allows us to do something that does not create a permanent long-term workforce for what are considered episodic or critical needs over defined periods of time.
I wonder if there's a difference between a natural disaster like a hurricane on the one hand, recovery from that, and the COVID-19 on the other, and specifically having to do with the amount of training that needs to be done for the people helping out. I mean, I'm just making this up, but handing out bottles of water, going around transporting people, that doesn't take a lot of training. But some of this contact tracing, I think, would take a fair amount of training, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, and within the FEMA system, we just treat disasters like disasters. We don't really break out natural or not natural. And it can be built in. In fact, what FEMA does in a lot of cases is we run training academies at our disaster sites to train people in things. So a lot of what we do, or a lot of what FEMA does with corps, is not the handing out the water. It's really going in and assessing damages. It's going in and doing claims processing. It's going in and helping communities plan for their mitigation projects of how to rebuild it better so it's not getting wiped out again and again. And when you look at the severity and frequencies of the natural hazards and now COVID, the question that I always came back to was we always seem to be going in with an adequate workforce to get things started. We saw this with the 3 hurricanes in 2017. By the time we got to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, FEMA's workforce was pretty much completely deployed. And this would give us more resources, but more importantly, it's an opportunity to put people to work until the economy gets back. And because these are not permanent long-term jobs, they're basically full-time, but measured over a couple of years. It puts people to work in critical areas, trains them on skills, and adds to their value. And as the economy starts to kick back up and the need is reduced, they start transitioning into the private sector.
Yeah, from an economic point of view, it's sort of counter-cyclical. You're hiring people when they're losing their jobs, which goodness knows people are losing their jobs right now. As you talk about getting back up and running and what you did at FEMA, I want to talk about the Waffle House Index, which is a fascinating story about how you came across it and what it told you when it came to, I would call them natural disasters. And I wonder whether it might have some application right now in how much of the economy is getting back running. Describe the Waffle House Index.
Well, the Waffle House Index was our observation in going to a lot of hurricanes that if there was anything that was going to be open, the first thing that would open would be a Waffle House. And there was, obviously, we were dealing with so many hurricanes when I worked for Governor Jeb Bush back in 2004, 2005, that we were responding as soon as the storms passed through. We weren't waiting for assessments. And the question was, well, how do you know you got somewhere bad? And that was where the Waffle House Index came from. If they're closed, it's bad. If they were open but have a limited menu, we probably had a lot of power outages, more mass care, but not search and rescue. And if the Waffle House is open and they have a full menu, it's not that bad. Keep going. And because they get open so quickly and rarely close, they became a good benchmark. And so as we started watching how COVID-19 began affecting the restaurant industry, we again adopted the Waffle House Index. If they're open and got a full menu but practicing social distancing and hand sanitizer, they're green. If they're open for only takeout, they're yellow, and if they're closed, it's red. And a lot of Waffle Houses did have to close, but more were open doing takeout. And now we're starting to see Waffle House cautiously begin to reopen stores for in-room dining. So we're moving back to green. And if they're successful, I think that's going to help us figure out how to get economies and reopening done successfully.
Something we'll have to keep our eye on. And by the way, there's a piece on the Bloomberg right now about the Waffle Houses in the state of Georgia, which is trying to reopen. Thank you so much. Great to have you with us. That's Craig Fugate. He is former head of FEMA. That's going to do it for Balance of Power for today, a day when we saw a lot more people losing their jobs in the United States and a lot of bad numbers out of Europe. But at the same time, there's some hope for a treatment for the coronavirus. That does it for Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. I'm David Weston.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information?
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Right now at the Halifax, wherever we're working from, we're all working together to be there for you.
So our customers can apply for a payment holiday on mortgages, loans or credit cards.
And because we want you to stay home and stay safe,
we've created step-by-step guides to help you set up online and mobile banking,
which is safer and easier than you may think.
But for those that really need to see us in person, we're keeping as many branches open as possible.
So however you need us at the Halifax,
we're here to help. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, go to halifax.co.uk.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
You know, I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in a front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I went up high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Thursday, April 30th, 2020. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly. And Jason, a lot of forces at play today. We've got earnings, we've got unemployment data, we've got finding a treatment for the virus. And I feel like you add it all up and there's a lot of angst out there because there are still so many unknowns.
Yeah, it feels like we went from optimism and maybe even a little bit of excitement or a little bit of enthusiasm to a lot of skepticism. And as you say, angst. We're going to break it down across the next few hours. Let's understand what those numbers look like, though. First, for that, we go to Charlie Pellet.
All right, Charlie. Thank you very much. And Carol Masser mentioned Gilead, the optimism there about remdesivir. We have got Gilead up by down now by 1.5%. But the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, they're all slumping right now amid dire economic warnings. As Carol mentioned, more dismal data and corporate results that reflect the coronavirus's toll on businesses. Oil moving higher again today, extending that rebound. We've got West Texas Intermediate crude up 11% right now, $16.78 the barrel on WTI. Gold is down 1.7%, lower by $29 the ounce at $16.84. The 10-year up 9/30 seconds. The yield now 0.59%. Equity markets close to the lows of the day right now, with the S&P down 41, a drop of 1.4%. The Dow slumping 392, a drop there of 1.6%. Sharp contrast from yesterday. NASDAQ is down 80, a drop of 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, it's an action-packed show, Carol Masser. We're going to talk about the cover story. It is not really about coronavirus, although that plays into everything. It's about Exxon, and the oil story has been tremendous, and not in a good way, and certainly not in a good way for Exxon. This was a company that was doing great, and wow, what a turnaround.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get into that cover story. We've also got, what a lineup. Co-chairman of Bain Capital, he's the co-owner of the Celtics, Steve Pagliuca is back with us. He is going to talk, speaking of coming back, bringing back Boston, and how do you do it safely? And so looking forward to talking with him. We're also going to check in, Jason, with the Subaru head of North America, Tom Dahl, on the auto industry, which is, again, another industry that's really been beaten down as America shut down.
Well, and another industry that we've been talking a lot about, in part because it is so important to all of us as consumers, but also to so many employees across the country, the restaurant industry. Tom Colicchio, a well-known chef, is going to be with us talking about that devastation across the restaurant business. And by the way, we've got a bunch of earnings, too.
Big ones, Amazon and Apple. It's, as we've been saying, a big week for those tech giants, those that have been often leading the market. So Amazon and Apple, after the close, will break it down. So, as we said, jam-packed 4 hours to come.
All right, let's get into setting the Business Week agenda. First, we turn to our team of experts. Michael McKee, Bloomberg News International Economics and Policy correspondent. He's in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Dave Wilson, our stocks editor, author of the Chart and Stock of the Day. He is joining us from New Jersey. Michael, I want to start with you because eco data and not good stuff coming across the tape this morning.
Yeah, I'm a bad guy here.
Yeah.
I'm
you are the bearer of many bad tidings.
Bad news, yeah. And the good thing about this all is that the news is worse than it even appears. You go over to Europe and you look at the GDP numbers, down 3.8% for the Eurozone overall. France, the worst ever, down 5.8%. Those are not annualized like ours. The French number, if you did it calculated the same way as the United States, it was like a negative 21%. So you can see how bad things actually are over there. Growth really slow. Germany has the Kurzarbeit, the program that allows people to continue working part-time and the government makes up the difference in pay. They still had 373,000 people in the month apply for jobless claims. The prior month, 1,000. So you can see it's really hitting Europe badly as well. Then the United States, all the numbers terrible. We had our jobless claims, 3.8 million, 30 million in 6 weeks losing their jobs. Personal spending was down 7.5%, the worst ever.
Wow.
Income's down 2%, and that even included big payments through unemployment insurance to people. So the number's just terrible all across the board. But then kind of we knew that. I said earlier on television, what's weird is that this doesn't seem weird.
Well, because we knew it was going to be terrible, right?
Yeah.
And we knew these numbers were going to be shocking, numbers that we've never seen before. And yet, I have to say, when it comes to the labor market, I'm going to do a Bloomberg Breakaway event tomorrow. I've got the CEO of Unilever. I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about is reskilling of workers, because so many workers will be out of jobs. The demand necessarily won't be there on the other side, Mike. And so do we need to think about how do you bring back workers, maybe give them new skills for the jobs that are going to be needed on the other side of this?
Yeah, that's going to be a major issue in restarting the economy, is how many jobs are actually needed, especially the people at the lower end of the income and education scale, because a lot of service industries probably aren't going to reopen, and getting those people retrained for something else has always been tough. It's going to be tough now.
And so, Dave Wilson, come on in here. Give us the contours of this trade, because we talked a lot about tech yesterday. We'll continue to talk more about tech. But as you go across the board, what are you seeing?
You know, I'm just struck by the thought, if we were having this discussion in the mid-2000s, it would be that stocks can't move without the financial companies. You know, today, I mean, you figure it would be stocks can't move without the big tech companies. And what we're seeing today sort of flies in the face of that, because you had the numbers out of Facebook yesterday. The shares are up 4.5%. Microsoft's higher after their results. We know that Amazon.com and Apple are coming after the close. Both those shares are up in advance of those results, and yet stocks are down. So it tells you that, you know, the big tech companies are not the be-all and end-all of the market. And it's understandable because, you know, you got a lot of companies that are coming out with results that just aren't going over well. Molson Coors is a perfect example on that score. They talked about how they're taking $50 million in charges because they're having to buy back kegs from restaurants, bars, wherever that couldn't sell them. And they've also got kegs in their own warehouses that they can't sell. So that's sort of the situation. I mean, you think about it, their business kind of dried up, a big piece of it, you know, when all the restaurants and the sports stadiums and all the rest started shutting down because of the coronavirus. So, you know, you're now seeing the effects there. And you're, you know, playing out with a whole lot of other companies. Tapestry is one, for example, the owner of Coach handbags and some other luxury brands. I mean, those stocks are taking a hit. Core's down 11.5%. Tapestry's down 11.5% too after their results.
Hey, Mike, come on back in, because I do wonder about what kind of recovery we see on the other side. You know, I know everybody's talking U-shaped, V-shaped. You know, what is it? You know, I don't know, what are you hearing from the folks that you talk to about what's the likelihood on the other side of this?
The pattern that most people like, and we kind of want to get away from the alphabet kind of thing,
Yeah.
but if you're going to do that, it's sort of the Nike swoosh, you know, a big decline and a little bit of an increase, and then slowly, gradually, it gets better. Jay Powell said the same thing yesterday that Christine Lagarde said today. This is going to be a long, slow recovery. Don't expect a V-shaped recovery. Don't expect it to be rapid. It'll probably be sometime in 2021, as Lagarde put it, where we get back to something we consider normal. It won't be what it was. It'll be a new normal, but it's going to be a year or more until it feels like that.
Yikes. Yeah. All right. Well, on that happy note, Mike McKee, thank you so much.
I'm
International.
Is there a cloud? Hey, Mike, is there a cloud above you as you walk around?
Hey, I can help with the Molson Coors guys if they need it.
There you go.
Or maybe already are.
He's in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio with a scythe, I think is what they call it. International economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg. Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg. He'll be back with us with his chart and stock of the day. Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day, Carol. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, 13.5%.
That's right. The viral pandemic sweeping the globe sent Lysol maker Reckitt Benckiser to its strongest start to the year in recent memory. Sales jumping 13.5% in the first quarter, really crushing estimates, prompting the company that's based over in the UK to raise its outlook for the year. The shares, by the way, up the most in 6 weeks, and they're ramping up production. The CEO saying on a conference call, to give you one example, in the coming month of May, in 1 month, we'll produce all the sanitizers we produced in 2019 for the whole year. There's perspective in one line.
Exactly. All right, let's get to Bob Moon now for world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, President Trump said his goal to fast-track a coronavirus vaccine is to produce 300 million doses by the end of the year. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Meeting with New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, the president was asked who was in charge of the vaccine project.
I think probably more than anything, I'm in charge, and I'm the one that gets blamed, and I get blamed anyway. I hope we're going to have a vaccine, and we're going to fast-track it like you've never seen before. If we come up with a vaccine, I think they probably will.
Governor Murphy asked for substantial federal aid to cash-strapped states. The president said he would work on helping strained hospitals. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
New York will stop subways for 4 early morning hours every day to disinfect the trains under an agreement between the state and city aimed at protecting the essential workers who rely on mass transit. The plan will begin May 6th, affecting about 10,000 riders who use the trains between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. when ridership is at its lowest since the pandemic. It will require a lot of work from multiple agencies, but much of the burden will fall on the city, according to Andrew Cuomo, the governor, at a press briefing in Albany today. Connecticut's largest teachers union is urging Governor Ned Lamont to be cautious before deciding whether to reopen schools this spring. The president of the Connecticut Education Association wrote the state must plan to stagger start times, implement new seating formats, and change how students walk the halls. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob.
There are times when you have to go it alone, but these should not be those times.
Would the medical crisis in any other central bank execute?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Walk me through the dynamics that are going to shape the euro in the coming months.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
Do we have the ability to coordinate with this virus?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
When things move this quick, do things break?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Economics.
Are we still ultra-accommodative?
Finance.
Do you see this as a technical correction?
Investment.
The markets move seismically.
The Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast.
Mistakes are made when you sell something because you need to sell it.
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and the names that shape the world's markets.
We speak with Professor Schiller of Yale University.
David Solomon, the Goldman Sachs CEO, joins me.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Listen today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
In-depth analysis.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £35 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Typical Danny. Imagine trying to unwind at a spa weekend and you wind up getting your mud pack all over your fave personalised dressing gown. But no worries, just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments. I'll fight you. Keep fighting, Helen. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course, Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. S&P 500 Index retreating from a 7-week high. U.S. and European shares are slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that reflected the coronavirus's toll on businesses. S&P down 35, down 1.2%. The Dow down 332 points, down 1.4%. NASDAQ down 56. That is a drop of 0.6%. Oil is extending a rebound after an early week tumble. West Texas Intermediate crude surging 14%, now at $17.21 a barrel. Gold down 1.7%, $16.84 the ounce. The 10-year up 11.30 seconds with a yield of 0.59%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So as we focus increasingly on testing and tracing to get control of the coronavirus, technology will play a large role in really assessing lots of information. Here to talk about specifically the digital tools to fight COVID-19 is Dr. Lane de Labrique. He is an infectious disease epidemiologist, and he's very well known when it comes to his work specifically on applying information and communication technologies. Chair of the World Health Organization's Digital Health Guidelines Development Group. He's also an associate professor at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is, of course, supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. He joins us, Dr. Labrique, on the phone from Baltimore. Dr. Labrique, nice to have you here with us. We do hear an awful lot from governors and mayors, health officials about the importance of testing and tracing. Technology will play a huge role in all of this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Carol. And, it's important to understand that unlike the influenza pandemic of 1918, we're living in a world that's more connected than ever before. There are more cell phones than there are people on the planet. So I think, each of these cell phones has the computing power that's more than what we use to send man to the moon in the Apollo mission. So if we fail to leverage the power of these devices that most, if not all of the people who are living with through this pandemic have in their pockets, will really be missing out on a major opportunity. The real question now is we're entering into a phase where it's a bit like the game of whack-a-mole, right? If we're not given a mallet to whack the moles down, when each time a case pops up, we need to be able to find out as soon as possible who they may have been in contact with. And the delays around finding out those contacts and trying to shut down the spread of the virus is going to be the difference between success and failure in reopening up the economy and getting out of this pandemic phase.
And so in an ideal world, Dr. Labrie, how does this work? I mean, how would it look to an everyday person like me? Carol is not an everyday person. She's an extraordinary person. But for an everyday person like myself, how am I interacting with this?
So I think, both of you are probably extraordinary people, but
Jason is.
What we're talking about is having a large proportion of a population downloading an app or a series of apps that share a common backbone technology that basically is on all the time, so that in the background it's capturing information, hopefully in a very secure and protected way, about who we're interacting with on a daily basis for extended periods of time. Then, if down the road someone finds out that they are COVID positive, without going through the laborious process of trying to go back and think through who are all the people that person had contact with over the past week or so, the app should be automatically able to calculate all of the other people who that person was in contact with, because those other people had the app as well. And I think that's where the challenge is, right? You can imagine if I'm standing in a crowd of people and I'm the only one of 100 people who has that app on their phone, it's not going to do us any good. So yeah, that's the real challenge is adoption. How do we get as many people as possible as part of our civic duty to download these applications that will then allow us to speed up that process of finding the brush fires and shutting them down effectively. That's the big challenge.
I have to say, Dr. Labrie, part of me is like, finally, we're going to have technology cooperation in our kind of healthcare environment, right? Because I feel like it's been so slow to happen, and I do wonder if this is the hurdle that really creates some massive systems that makes our healthcare system more efficient, where the system works better and we benefit as patients. On the other hand, man, what kind of privacy are we giving up?
Yeah, it's absolutely that's the $1 million question, right? It's a real difference between collectivist and individualist societies, where how much of our privacy are we willing to give up, and who are we willing to allow to monitor this data and have access to this information. And this is at the heart of the big debate that's going on right now. Apple and Google recently made a lot of news about launching a system that would allow this data to be captured in an anonymized and secure way, without giving control of that data to a centralized authority. And that's where a lot of the challenges. The UK has said they're not going to go with that system, and other countries are struggling through this, and Germany has just said that they will accept that decentralized system. And what this means is the data is not made available to the public health authorities. Basically, you, as the holder of the app, get notified if you have been potentially exposed to some anonymous person who was possibly shedding virus. And so, as a public health professional, would I like to have access to that information so I can help those people take care of themselves, and I can help make sure they have the best information possible, and I can also track the number of potential cases and contacts?
Right.
Sure, that would be the ideal. But I think we have to make some compromises about how much data people are willing to give away versus how many people we can get involved in these systems.
Right. Well, and that is one of the big questions. Stick around. We're going to continue this conversation in just a couple minutes. Dr. Alan Labrik, he is infectious disease epidemiologist and associate professor at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health.
I think about like our new world order, right?
I mean, this is it.
This
is it. I mean,
right?
and this is so central to every conversation that we're having. We talk about testing and tracing. Really eager to continue this conversation in just a few minutes. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. As Americans lock down amid the coronavirus pandemic, many lock down their wallets. The government says personal spending fell by a record 7.5% in March. Incomes fell by the most since 2013. Consumer confidence continues to weaken. Bloomberg's Consumer Comfort Index fell last week for a sixth week, but the decline was the smallest since the coronavirus plunge began. It's been a down day for stocks as the toll of jobs lost to the pandemic continues to mount. The government said another 3.8 million first-time jobless benefit claims were filed last week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 352, the S&P 500 down 37, the Nasdaq Composite down 62. The coronavirus crisis is speeding the end of an era in U.S. aviation. Delta Airlines says it'll retire the last of its MD-80 and MD-90 jets by the end of June. They were to have flown through 2022. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. The markets.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Right now at the Halifax, wherever we're working from, we're all working together to be there for you.
So our customers can apply for a payment holiday on mortgages, loans or credit cards.
And because we want you to stay home and stay safe,
we've created step-by-step guides to help you set up online and mobile banking,
which is safer and easier than you may think.
But for those that really need to see us in person, we're keeping as many branches open as possible.
So however you need us at the Halifax,
we're here to help. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, go to halifax.co.uk.
Be part of the sports conversation with Sports Talk Radio on TuneIn. Join the discussion around your favorite local teams with sports stations broadcasting in your area.
The game will be 185 to 183 and somebody wins, whatever. Football, it's either full go or it's not. You got like, oh, it's thud. I can practice what they call
Follow
thud.
national storylines and debates with ESPN Radio.
Does the NBA have a hiring problem when it comes to front office jobs in the leagues and a minority hiring issue? Stephen A. chimed in on that today on First Take.
It also resonates with me, Max. You can appreciate this position. One of the candidates was Brian Colangelo. We know what happened. I like Brian, but we know.
And hear what's happening worldwide with international channels like Talk Sport.
Seems as I'm sort of doing my life in reverse at the moment. I was on cricket tours when I was 20 years old, and now I'm 31. I'm sat at home injured playing PlayStation. So it's a tournament basically where you create your own character.
In your backyard and around the globe. Keep your finger on the pulse of the sports world with TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with one of our experts down at Johns Hopkins, Alan Lebrique. He is working on this tracing notion that really has captured, I think, a lot of people's imagination here in terms of the New World Order, Carol.
Well, and we're realizing that's what it's all about going forward and getting into reopening our economy. All right, more on that in just a moment, but let's right now get a check on your top business stories. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. We are lower across the board here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that reflected the coronavirus's toll. S&P 500 index falling from a 7-week high, down today by 33 points, down 1.1%. Dow Industrials down 314, down 1.3%. NASDAQ, which yesterday was almost flat on the year, tumbling 55 points, giving up a lot of those gains, down today by 0.6%. For the year, NASDAQ is now lower by 1.25%. 10 years up 8/32 with a yield of 0.60%. We've got gold down 1.5%, $16.87 the ounce, and crude surging today. West Texas Intermediate up 22%, up $3.33 a barrel at $18.40. As the search for a vaccine and treatments for COVID-19 continues, there has been a lot of interest in Gilead's drug remdesivir. Dr. Jason Farley is a professor of nursing at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and on Bloomberg Television this morning he told us as research continues, they have been learning a lot about increasing the oxygen in a patient's blood.
We've got great data about the way we position patients that will actually help improve oxygen saturations or the amount of oxygen in the blood. It can actually slow down if a patient's progressing toward the need for ventilation by placing them on their stomach. We call that prone position or proning the patient. We can do that before a patient gets ventilated. We can do that after a patient gets ventilated.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Food and Drug Administration says it's moving at, quote, lightning speed to review data on Gilead's experimental COVID-19 treatment, remdesivir. Gilead shares their lower today by 1.7%. Facebook shares rallying after earnings today. The company reported results that surged past expectations. Facebook shares up 4.6% on a down day for the rest of the market. Tesla now trading lower also after earnings, down by 3.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, let's continue our conversation with Dr. Alan Lebrique. He is infectious disease epidemiologist and associate professor at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health. And you just heard Charlie mention that school, of course, supported by Mike Bloomberg, the owner of this radio station. So, Dr. Lebrique, one of the questions that I feel like comes up, and we talked a lot about the privacy aspect to this, But I keep thinking about this notion that we live in a global world and people travel, at least in normal times, all over the globe. How does this tracing work globally? It's one thing for like my little town here in, the New York suburbs to maybe be able to pull this off. But doing this at scale seems really hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Jason. I think there are different tools for different parts of the pandemic problem. The application for contact tracing that we've been talking about is really about how do we manage the bulk of the forest fire that we're dealing with here in the U.S. And if as a country we can come together and use a technology in a way that's smart, that protects this fundamental human right to privacy that's very important in a democracy, and that is carefully overseen and in a bipartisan way, in a nonpartisan way, that the personal information is used only to protect public health and for no other purpose. And whenever it's possible to de-aggregate or de-identify data, to aggregate data or to de-identify data, so that individual identity isn't compromised. I think we have to learn from what other countries have done successfully, and try to adapt things that places like Hong Kong or Singapore or South Korea have done with varying degrees of success. But nonetheless, they've used the power of technology to get a handle on the pandemic in their countries. So how do we adopt those strategies to the U.S. is really the critical question at hand.
I do wonder, too, Dr. Labrik, if post 9/11, right, I feel like there's a lot of information that we've already shared just because of making sure that we're safe when we get on airlines and airplanes, and whether it's through global entry or through TSA. So I do wonder if we've already jumped over one hurdle, and this is just another one that, this is the world we're living in, and we need to figure out how to be safe on so many different levels. Is that fair or not apples to apples?
I think it's a choice that we have to make individually and collectively. I think this kind of access to information or special legal powers that come into play during public health emergencies is not something that doesn't have precedent. There have been many epidemics and outbreaks of disease in U.S. history where legal authority has been granted to public health systems to take action and protect the public's health during an emergency. So I think it's important to convey to the public that these measures are largely temporary for the most part, in order for us to be able to control the epidemic and move us into a state of normalcy, relative normalcy, where we can go about our daily lives without the amount of fear and concern that has been so dominant over the past 4 to 5 weeks. So I think you hit the nail on the head. We have to consider how is life going to change permanently, and what are some of the emergency temporary measures that we have to take as a country in order for us to get a handle on this virus.
Only about 30 seconds left here. How optimistic are you at this moment that we do the right thing?
I'm actually quite optimistic. I think we're impatient. Yeah. But we need to be more patient and more optimistic. Science and scientists know, for the most part, ways to combat this pandemic, and we need to be listening to the voice of reason and the voice of science.
Yeah. All right.
God, I feel better.
Yeah, I feel a little better.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's that privacy thing you're a little nervous about?
A little nervous about that, but
I have to say there is part of me that's a skeptic and like, who do I trust with all this? But you know what? I feel like so much of our information is unfortunately out there already.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. All right. Our thanks to Dr. Alan Labrik, so smart, infectious disease epidemiologist and associate professor at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health. He's also the chair of the World Health Organization's Digital Health Guidelines Development Group, on the front lines in a different way, in some sense, in terms of understanding where we go. from here.
Yeah, and the next stage, I think, in terms of dealing with the virus. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines and to Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. President Trump is predicting a strong economy ahead. Trump spoke during a meeting with New Jersey's Democratic Governor Phil Murphy.
Well, I think we're going to have a great third quarter. It's going to be a transition. So when I say great, I think the transition is going to be really terrific. And we're going to take it into the fourth. And I think we're going to have potentially a great fourth quarter.
Trump's comments come on the day the Labor Department reports the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits soared past 30 million, worsening a crisis unmatched since the 1930s and heightening pressure on political leaders to lift restrictions that are hamstringing the economy. Tyson Foods says it's temporarily suspending operations at a Nebraska beef processing plant that is the largest employer for neighboring Sioux City, Iowa, after a surge of coronavirus cases in the area. The Tyson's Foods officials say they will close the Dakota City plant Friday through Monday to perform a deep cleaning of the facility. New York City will shut down subway service each day from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. to increase cleaning of trains and stations during the coronavirus crisis. Governor Andrew Cuomo's announcement comes 2 days after he called conditions in the system disgusting.
The entire public transit system in downstate New York will be disinfected every 24 hours.
The cleaning will take place when ridership has been lowest. Governor Gavin Newsom intends to close all California beaches and state parks starting tomorrow in the wake of a weekend that saw a crush of people at open seashores. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
All right.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
In-depth analysis.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £35 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
This is a message from the government to all essential workers. You're doing vital jobs to keep our country going, and you can now get tested for coronavirus. From health professionals to emergency services, from delivery drivers to grocery workers, from teachers to care workers. Tests are available for you and anyone in your household who has symptoms. For a full list of all essential workers eligible and how to get a test, go to gov.uk/coronavirus.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening. Behind the highlight reels, championship rings, and colossal paychecks, there are sports stories that fuel, deepen, and even challenge our love for the game. For true tales of underdogs, anti-heroes, and game-changing innovators, search sports documentaries on the TuneIn app.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. S&P 500 index is retreating from a 7-week high. The S&P down 38, a drop there of 1.3%. The Dow tumbling 348 points, down 1.4%. NASDAQ down 71, that is a drop of 0.8%. Stocks are slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that reflect the coronavirus's toll. Speaking of earnings, after the bell, we will be hearing from Apple and Amazon. The 10-year up 430 seconds with a yield of 0.61%. Gold down 1.7%, $16.83 the ounce. Crude oil, big story again today, surging 23%. West Texas Intermediate crude up $3.50 the barrel, now at $18.57. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser. Let's talk about the cover story in Bloomberg Business Week this week. It is a tour de force in many ways, and one of these stories that you really just want to sink your teeth into, and it also tells you a lot about the state of the world, including a little bit on the virus, obviously, because you can't touch anything without that, but the oil market, and specifically the story of Exxon. Brian Grewley wrote it. He joins us on the phone from Florida, as does Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. So, Joel, it was interesting because, we communicate with you about what the cover is going to be, and when you told us Exxon, I was like, oh, yeah, sort of like put my hands together, like, can't wait to get my hands on that. Tell us why now.
Well, it actually ends up being a pretty important week for Exxon. They had a dividend announcement that they made yesterday. They have earnings on Friday. Obviously, the backdrop is the carnage that happened in the oil markets last week, where we saw basically some unprecedented action with oil prices going negative and surplus just being, everything that can possibly hold oil anywhere in the world is holding oil right now. All of which leads us to a company that's like basically the West's most powerful oil company. And for years, this was actually basically the most valuable company in the world. But as Brian's story, and to be clear, he co-wrote it with Kevin Crowley, it makes clear there's basically been a decade of miscalculations that has really gotten us to this moment. And now comes cheap oil with the wave of coronavirus. Brian, when you guys dug into this, what kind of miscalculations did you guys find?
Essentially, Exxon started behaving in a less disciplined way than it had into the early aughts, where they would announce a deal for some acreage or another company, and it was clear to the street, here's how they're going to make money off this in the near term. And so in 2009, they bought a really big natural gas company to get in on shale gas. And I think gas prices started dropping even before they closed the deal. And they could have gone into shale oil. They totally didn't. Could have made a lot of money then at that time, but they did gas. They got creamed. Same thing, they went into the oil sands in Western Canada. Very expensive way to get oil out of sand, essentially. It's more like mining than drilling. And that turned out to be $16 billion spent, not very much. Russia, another going to be a great big deal with the old Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson, his comrade Vladimir Putin, envisioning $300 to $500 billion in the Arctic, and then Putin went after Crimea, and Obama said, "You're not doing business over there anymore, Exxon," and that kind of killed that deal. And so it was going after these great, big, risky deals, and underlying this was, to some degree, the assumption that we all held for many, many years, decades even, that oil is a finite resource and it's going to run out. We're going to hit peak oil. And as all they were doing all that assumption was changing radically because of the technology that enables companies to break into very tight spaces of oil and gas and bring out these huge deposits of oil and gas that just weren't accessible before. So we went from assumed scarcity to certain abundance.
So I have to say, Brian, I feel like you and Kevin have the makings of a book here, and there have been several books written about Exxon because, and I think you cite one where they called Exxon one of the most powerful businesses ever produced by American capitalism, and they have been a company, right, just great, a sign of great corporate America, and just have plowed ahead decade after decade. So here we are now, and they're in a tough spot on many different levels. Can they plow ahead?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, Exxon's, they're not going bankrupt, or they're not in that kind of trouble. They have a reasonably strong balance sheet given the circumstances of the market. And what's going to happen in oil in the next several months, there is a good chance that a lot of the independent, smaller players in the shale fields in West Texas and in North Dakota are just, they're not going to be able to make it. And so they're going to look to the big boys to buy them out. And, the Exxons and Chevrons of the world aren't going to pay them 90 cents on the dollar. They're going to buy them on the cheap. So that's going to be an opportunity for them to buy some assets that they could make, useful on the cheap. But other than that, some of the investors we spoke with, they're like, so they just keep spending on this betting on this thing that's going to happen 5 years from now. And, it's like free beer tomorrow. They just keep pushing it back 5 years. And at some point, the street's already expressed its frustration with Exxon, but there's some opportunity here for them.
I think one of the main challenges, Jason, and Carol, just in the here and now is literally just that cost of oil, right? Like we have a pretty amazing look at what their break-even cost is for 2020, and it is. If I just asked you, what do you think it would be, Jason?
So I unfortunately already know it because you told me as we were teeing up the buy. It's 60, right?
$60, yeah. So it's $5 more than BP, $10 more than Shell and Chevron. And you just think about where the cost of oil is, and it just the dynamics are just moving against them. But like to Brian's point here, like this is a company that they know what they're doing, and maybe they've missed it a couple times. And the other thing that we're going to see now is Texas has proven, and the Permian Basin has proven to be this really powerful force that can switch it on, switch it off. But it's also a place that there's a lot of debt. So somebody like an Exxon could come in and actually make some pretty lucrative investments and perhaps right its ship a little bit.
It's a must read.
It's an absolute must read. I really was blown away by the story. It's the cover story this week. And the other great thing is, as we've recently started doing, you can actually hear this story later on in our podcast feed. You'll hear a professional reading it. It's not even us. It's more professional than us reading this story, but it is in the Bloomberg Business Week podcast
when he does
feed.
That. Thanks, Jason.
More professional than me. How's that?
No.
But it's not you.
It's no, it's not. And it is a wonderful way to listen to a story because there's so many interesting perspectives and facts in there and information about where Exxon was and where it is today. So definitely check it out. Our thanks to Joel Weber, editor of Businessweek, and Brian Gruley, projects and investigations reporter at Bloomberg News. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Businessweek, we're going to continue. We'll come back and check on the bond market and the economic news today. We had some eye-popping stats. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. You're smiling.
I know. You love when I lightly insult us. It makes you laugh.
Keeps us humble. It's like being around my family. It's my TV and radio family.
Have you ever thought, I wish... Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides into the top spot for a favorite baseball player active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks, Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's Classic Game Replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be two champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be one team hold up the trophy.
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Stocks are slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that reflect the toll of the coronavirus. The S&P 500 index retreating from a 7-week high as the U.S. reported a larger than expected jump in unemployment claims. Right now, the S&P is down 40. That's a drop of 1.4%, close to the low of the day. The Dow is down 354 points, a drop there of 1.4%. NASDAQ down 77, a decline of 0.9%. Got to keep it locked into Bloomberg Radio just to see how things shake out at that closing bell. 10-year yield now 0.62%. Gold is down 1.7%, $16.84 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude surging 25%, now at $18.89 a barrel. So WTI closing in on $19 a barrel. European Central Bank this morning intensified its response to the coronavirus crisis by cutting the cost of funding for banks while urging politicians to provide more fiscal support. As for the outlook for the euro area economy, here's ECB President Christine Lagarde.
The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime. Measures to contain the spread of the coronavirus, COVID-19, have largely halted economic activity in all the countries of the euro area and across the globe.
And speaking of which, oil demand is down, but oil is surging today. As I mentioned, West Texas Intermediate crude up 25%. So among some of the oil majors today, ExxonMobil is down 2.2%. Chevron shares slumping by 3.1%. ConocoPhillips is up today by just about 0.1%. Royal Dutch Shell making big news today, cutting its dividend for the first time since at least the Second World War, as the oil slump triggered by the coronavirus pandemic reshapes the energy market. Royal Dutch Shell's ADRs down by 12%. Recapping S&P now down by 41 points. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics. It was a huge day in that world, not necessarily in a good way. We talked about that at the top of the show with our own Michael McKee. Let's bring in another great team, Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg. She joins us on our access line. Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. He's on the phone. So, Kathleen, I want to start with you. You had a big panel earlier today through the Booth School over at University of Chicago. Timely, certainly, given everything that was happening with all this data coming out. Tell us about it. Tell us about what you learned.
Well, it was very interesting with Austin Goolsbee, former head of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama. Raghu Rajan, former head of the Reserve Bank of India, was chief economist at the IMF, and Randy Krasner, frequent guest on Bloomberg as well. That's who an was a former Fed governor. Lineup. Oh, you know, and what happened, Carol, was I was out there in January, Economic Outlook 2020, and just a few days ago, Randy said, hey, things have changed so much, we've got to do this again. And it was a super session. What comes to mind just off the top of my head, Austin Goolsbee's kind of all about, look, if we can get the testing and the data collection and really wrestle this to the ground the way they have in South Korea, for example, this U.S. economy can go in and out of this pretty quickly. Very optimistic. He doesn't think this is in any way a conventional recession. I think that Randy's more concerned about waves of bankruptcies, which we're going to see, and how you deal with them. And he gave an example from the 30s of something the federal government did that worked really well. Raghu, of course, has been concerned about short-term thinking for a long time. And I think, unlike some other people, he's a little bit more worried about moral hazard. He's a little bit more worried about bailing out people now and what that's going to mean for their judgment in the future. But they all say, look, what are you going to say about the economy? It's in a tank. It's in terrible shape. It's the worst, 3 months or 4 4 months we've had in history. No joking around about where we are, but I think somewhat different views on how we're getting out.
Well, and I really do wonder about, do you go to your library and like, oh yeah, let me pull out this book. Here's the playbook and how we do. We just don't know. We don't have this. We haven't dealt with this before.
Well, we're going to write them, Carol. That'll be our task, okay? For the next one, okay? I was thinking about all the notes that I've been taking and scribbling all over the place. I have this pile, I know, but I'm thinking, there's another book. I know, I'll just talk
Carol's
about it.
Post-it notes. I don't know.
Carl Riccadonna probably is not surrounded by Post-it notes, unlike myself. Carl, come on in on this and, another eye-popping data point.
Carol, I hate to call you out live on the air, but actually I swim in Post-it notes on a regular basis, as everyone who sits near me.
See, this is why
times I can attest.
This is why we get along so
You Jersey City kids, you stick together.
Exactly.
Can I just tell you my family?
The autumn leaves fall.
My family for my birthday, because I don't know, not even the Post-it notes, but they did put Post-it notes all around the house, just saying very sweet things. But it was just a continuation of my Post-it note world.
On brand.
All right, Carl, all yours.
Anyhow, down to the brass tacks. In terms of economic data here, first I want to touch on something Kathleen brought up, which is this notion of moral hazard. During a black swan event that really is a black swan of black swans, so this is a 100-year type of event, I don't think it's really fair to talk about moral hazard and worry about forcing businesses and households to fail, possibly even states and municipalities, to try to prove a point about preparing for a rainy day. And this was something Jay Powell addressed yesterday in his press conference. He said it's really not fair to cause people to default on over this type of event. And so the Fed really is not concerned about that moral hazard, and they're more concerned about propping up the economy, let the economy return to its productive capacity, and those who have truly been irresponsible, they'll have their moment where they have to pay the piper, but now is not the time to execute such a kind of harsh judgment on businesses. And we can see that in today's data with, again, unemployment filings at very high levels, higher than expected. We're still in multi-million territory. So even though it looks good, the improvement over the last couple of weeks, really, these are exceptional numbers that, barring the last 4 weeks, this would be a record high reading on claims. So there's tremendous economic pain happening in the economy at the moment. And we saw that also in the income and spending data, again, echoing what we saw in retail sales a few weeks back and showing a deep dive in income. Mind you, that was March, so that's just the front edge of the storm, and the April number will be far, far worse, as we'll see tomorrow morning with the manufacturing ISM survey.
And Carl, I do wonder, there's been a lot written about, people not being able to file claims, not being able to do certain things in various states. How much confidence do we have sort of in the data at this point, and whether, we may see more of this sort of coming to bear over the next few weeks?
Well, we certainly see different filing patterns for unemployment benefits, for example, as we look on a state-by-state basis. And so certain states like Michigan, which every year the auto sector shuts down for retooling for the new model year, and workers get about 2 weeks furlough where they apply for benefits. Those states have been way out in front because they're a well-oiled machine for a surge in claims. Other states that don't see that same kind of seasonality in the data were not prepared for this and have very old-fashioned systems using old-fashioned software. Some are, majority of filings are done over the telephone. And so those states have lagged behind, and that's why it was slow to peak. And I think will be slow to come down as a lot of those backlogs are still being processed. That being said, the fact that we are moving lower means that even though backlogs are clogging up the system, we're still moving in the right direction. Engaging in real time how many people are working and not working is one of the best ways to assess the depth of the dive in the economy that we're seeing in Q2, and also when that dive starts to bottom out.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
And really I had to be reminded. I forgot that we're not getting monthly jobs tomorrow. It's actually a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Normally the first Friday of every month, but we'll get another check in that.
I think when it's the first, they don't do it.
Yeah, I know. Threw me off a little bit though. Anyway, it's going to be another eye-popping number. Kathleen Hayes, thank you so much. Great panel. About 10,000 people signed up in that first ever virtual panel that they did at the Chicago Booth School. So fascinating. Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor at Bloomberg News, and my Post-it note buddy, Carl Riccadonna, Chief Economist at Bloomberg Economics, and neighbor. Just off
guys,
the
like
street.
in normal times, like see each other like out in the real world.
Yeah. I know.
Crazy.
I like knowing that he's in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
it's nice. A good thing.
Yeah, it is good.
But it's interesting that he talked about bailing out states. Right? We heard from Lindsay Piegza that she said we got to be careful about doing that.
Right.
That states that already had problems going into this.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to Bob Moon now with World and National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you very much. The U.S. Navy hospital ship Comfort leaving New York City today after spending weeks treating both COVID-19 and non-COVID-19 patients. The hospital ship treated just under 200 patients during its month docked on the west side of Manhattan. Air Force General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, commander of the U.S. Northern Command, took pride in the mission.
It's this whole of America approach where America is stepping up, whether it be the military, whether it be the frontline workers that are out there in the healthcare, those that are delivering things, those that are keeping the food supply going. This whole of America approach is what's going to allow us to prevail, and prevail we will.
The crew will isolate for 14 days as the ship begins its voyage home to Norfolk, Virginia. The Trump administration is sounding more optimistic about Gilead's experimental treatment for coronavirus. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager reports.
FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn tells Bloomberg his agency is moving at lightning speed to review the results on remdesivir. Dr. Anthony Fauci with the National Institutes of Health tells NBC's Today Show the trials are clearly positive.
This is the first very highly powered, about 1,100 individuals, and it was a placebo-controlled randomized trial, which I've been talking about for some time now, which is really the gold standard of how you prove something is safe and either works or doesn't work.
Fauci says he expects a decision from FDA really quickly. Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
When you follow the facts,
Bloomberg's been reporting on this intelligence community report.
When you seek out the experts,
the investment banks that Bloomberg speak to also want some relief.
No matter what else is happening,
it's been pretty hard to read the signals.
At least you know what's real.
The economic fallout from the virus risks becoming entrenched.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. Ah, that's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision-makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Are you interested in a challenging...
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £35 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited, credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments. I'll fight you. Keep fighting, Helen. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dream Lab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Sports and festivals on hold. Weddings and christenings on hold. Marathons on hold. But not everything is on hold.
My name's Lynn, and I have terminal cancer. I don't know how many weeks I have left.
In this time of national emergency, Marie Curie nurses and hospices are needed more than ever. We can only care for dying people like Lynn if you donate. Visit mariecurie.org.uk to donate to our emergency appeal.
Right now at the Halifax, wherever we're working from, we're all working together to be there for you.
So our customers can apply for a payment holiday on mortgages, loans or credit cards.
And because we want you to stay home and stay safe,
we've created step-by-step guides to help you set up online and mobile banking,
which is safer and easier than you may think.
But for those that really need to see us in person, we're keeping as many branches open as possible.
So however you need us at the Halifax,
we're here to help. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, go to halifax.co.uk.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move lower for the U.S. equity markets. Couple of stories just want to pass along. First, California sees COVID-19 cases rising 5.2% in a day, now at 48,917. Governor Newsom expected to announce a full closure of California beaches and state parks. Also, NASCAR has announced that its season will resume May 17th, 7 races in 10 days, including 4 in its Elite Cup Series. Now, let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here is Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks under pressure today from the start as we await earnings from Amazon and Apple. Dow's currently down 277 points. S&P's dropped 29. NASDAQ declines by 45. The U.S. 10 yield at 0.63%. WTI crude futures are up 25%. Small caps fell 3.7%. And transports are in the red, down 240 points. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Boeing and Apple, while American Express and Raytheon led to the downside. After earnings, Tesla rose as much as 8.6% before reversing. Microsoft was little changed, and Facebook rose 4.5%. In other news, Boeing to sell $25 billion of bonds in a 7-part offering, and Georgia to lift the shelter-in-place order for most of the state tomorrow. In deal news, Loral Space is in advanced talks for a combination with Telesat. And wrapping things up, besides Apple and Amazon, some of the names pointing after the bell tonight include Gilead, Whirlpool, and Visa. Live from the First and Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg-type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, this is a conversation I've really been looking forward to. This guy I've known for a number of years, followed him and all of his adventures very closely. Steve Paliuca is, of course, co-chairman of Bain Capital, also the co-owner of the Boston Celtics. Heard of him. He joins us on the phone from Boston. Steve, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
We're doing okay. I mean, as best as we can do.
I guess we've all had better months.
We have.
Yes,
we have indeed.
absolutely.
So tell us about Boston and what you're working on, because obviously folks like you sort of rolling up their sleeves and putting together a plan, that's what's got to happen. And you're part of a group there. Tell us what you're up to.
Well, this is obviously a huge systemic, complicated problem. And I've been fortunate to be at Bain Capital, involved in healthcare investing, biotech investing for a long period of time, and have really got a great group of scientists that have pitched into this effort, along with the Mass High Tech Council, an incredible group with really smart CEOs. And so we started a while back trying to think that we're going to need a back-to-work plan in the face of COVID, because a vaccine will be 12 to 18 months away at best case. And somebody's got to start thinking about that, and we had the expertise and group to put it together. Also, McKinsey consulting team, so a lot of resources. So we began looking at that in earnest about 3 weeks ago. The focus 3 weeks ago, and appropriate focus of the government, was really keeping the hospital systems working, and they've done a fantastic job of that here in Massachusetts. Charlie Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito and the hospital leadership have done an amazing job at that. But we thought we'd try to get a bunch of data and get out ahead of what will happen when we are going back to work. And how do we go back to work to accomplish two things? One would be we can't have the hospital system overwhelmed again. So steps on how we would not have to be overwhelmed if this thing snapped back. And second, how do we have people go back to work safely? And so we focused getting data from all over the world with the best scientists and all the resources that we have to put that into a kind of succinct presentation.
Hey, Steve, I do wonder, too, okay, did you look at China? Did you look at South Korea? I'm curious some of the conversations that you guys had in trying to figure out how do you do this?
The way you do this is try to segment the problem. It's a huge problem that you can't. It's overwhelming if you try to attack the whole problem. So you segment into those two issues on how do you keep the hospitals, the capacity there, and how do you really reduce what's called the R naught factor. That's a complicated way of saying the rate of spread of the virus. And then with the resources we have, scientists here, great scientists in Massachusetts, led by Dr. Tom Cahill, we can look over the world for their contacts and everything that's out there, and review different papers and different subjects and different things that different countries have used and what the results have been. And then as best we can, try to collate it, put that together and take the best demonstrated practices to see what can benefit us in Massachusetts.
And so, Steve, when you look at back to work and sort of what that's going to look like, so many conversations happening, so much speculation, what's your best guess or what's something that you're pretty confident we're going to be doing that is different from the world before?
I'm pretty confident that we'll be wearing masks for quite a while. Studies across the world are saying that masks are a very effective technique for reducing that R naught factor. And right now, that R naught factor for this disease is about 2.5, which means it kind of grows exponentially. That's why it's such a problem. And it obviously has had a lot of deaths result in that. So it's a very pernicious virus. So I think we'll be seeing masks. I think we'll be seeing changes in the workplace. I think we'll be seeing having to wake up every day and go through a checklist to make sure that you're not coming to work infected. There's a lot of data out there about a high number of asymptomatic kind of people carrying the disease. Our studies have shown, the studies we looked at have shown that maybe that number is not as big as people think. It's actually that people ignore a slight virus, that they ignore a slight cough. And in other countries, when people put in systems where you wake up and you have to fill out on a cell phone, do you have a cough, do you have a virus, what's your temperature? All these indicators, that has been very effective to people self-diagnosing. So they're actually not asymptomatic. They just have very light symptoms. And those folks asymptomatic and ones with light symptoms have been super spreaders because they don't know they have disease and they're seeing lots of other people. So your world will change in terms of getting ready for work. You brush your teeth, and then you're going to have to really go to your cell phone and fill out a form that says you self-checked.
Wow. And no big gatherings, I'm guessing.
Very hard to have big gatherings with such an exponential growth rate of this kind of virus.
This just mirrors. We talked earlier with Dr. Labreque over at Johns Hopkins, and that same idea about the role of technology in all of this. That we're going to have to continue to give up some privacy or let go some of those privacy concerns in order for us, Steve, to get back to a quote unquote more normal way of living.
Well, I think that's a really good question and important point. All the programs that we're looking at, would have a huge privacy component, and it's really a public policy issue of where you draw that line. So it's a tough call. It's obviously a life and death decision, and you probably will have to quote give up some privacy, but hopefully very protected in a governmental encrypted type form. There are all sorts of public policy issues. So, for example, this virus is really deadly if someone has a comorbidity, condition, hypertension, heart issues, and so if you decide you're not going to come to work because that's an issue, is that public? Is it not public? How do you do that?
Right.
How do you ensure those people's safety if you have a back to work program? It's a tough question.
Right, that's right. Like your full medical history has to be part of this, right? Because it makes you potentially more vulnerable, or does make you more vulnerable in a situation like this.
We're lucky in Massachusetts in that Governor Baker has a commission, and Karen Polito is Lieutenant Governor Polito is leading, and they are thinking about all these issues. So they're really on top of it, and they're going to come out with a plan that as best as you possibly can protect privacy. The problem with this virus and not having a vaccine, how pernicious it is that there are actually no perfect solutions to go back to work.
Right.
Even if you could test everybody every day, tests are 98% accurate. So some people are going to slip through, and there's human error in tests. Whether even if we have a home test, there's human error in all tests. So perfect is the enemy of the good. I think we can, though, construct a plan that by and large will make people safe if they follow these procedures, and we can get the economy going back again. The terrible thing about this disease is it has a disproportionate impact on lower income workers, or workers in restaurants, in the travel industry, and so with no work, that is a terrible situation to be in. And so we've got to figure out a way to safely get people back to work and safeguard our hospital system as well.
All right, only got about 2 minutes left, but we got to talk basketball. Are we going to see an NBA season, Steve?
Yeah, Adam Silver is an incredible commissioner, and he's on top of this every day. And I would just say he's monitoring it, working with public safety health officials. He has access to all the data that we have, and the NBA and his incredible staff and medical group has access to all the best information from China throughout the world. And Adam's number one watchword is the NBA will be opened up in a safe and responsible way, and working with government officials to do that in a safe and responsible way. So I like everybody else, I'd love to see the season back, but I agree with Adam that he's got to come up with a plan that's going to work for public safety, and then we'll get basketball back. And he's going to take it day by day as more information pours in. The crazy thing is, we're only about. It seems like we've been in the situation, to me at least, since I've been sitting in my office looking at the same window for, I don't know, 30 days now.
Yeah.
It seems like this has been 4 years to me, but it's only been about a couple months.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, but is it safe to say that probably a first step will be games being played, but without fans in the stands?
Adam is looking at all that, and I think that's a logical conclusion. If games in all sports begin, probably you want to make sure that the sports are not responsible for spreading the virus. So
right.
Obviously having fans not be in the stands would get you an earlier opening.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're certainly missing basketball. I missed chatting with you earlier this year about March Madness and your beloved Blue Devils. So hopefully we get back to something resembling something normal. Steve Paliuca, glad you're on the case. Co-chairman of Bain Capital, co-owner of the Boston Celtics, joining us on the phone from Boston, Carol.
And look forward to hearing about their recovery and return to work framework, because I think this is what everybody's going to have to be sharing about what works. What are the systems? I thought about when we were talking with one of the, April Taylor of Billions, how do you do film production? So
right.
I think everybody's got to be sharing this information, and love how Boston gets together, pulls in leaders from all walks of life. And
these are your people.
You got to love Boston. It's just magnificent.
It's a great town.
It's a great town.
All right, let's get to Charlie Pellet. He's a great guy, and he's got your business headlines. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much. Here's what's going on. We have got 30 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, lower, yes, off their session lows. Let's get right to the numbers. I'll give you the why in a moment. S&P down 26. That's a drop of 0.9%. The Dow is down 1%, tumbling 250 points. We've got NASDAQ down 30 points right now for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That is a drop of just about 0.3%. Stocks are slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that reflected the coronavirus's toll. Gold declined the most in 2 weeks. Looking at gold, we've got the precious metal down 1.6%, $16.86 the ounce. Crude surging today, up by 24%, $18.65 a barrel on West Texas Intermediate crude. Food and Drug Administration says it's moving, quote, at lightning speed to review data on Gilead Sciences' experimental COVID-19 treatment remdesivir after encouraging results emerge from a key trial. Dr. Jason Farley is a professor of nursing at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and on Bloomberg Television this morning, he talked about the data he's seeing surrounding the drug.
In that interim analysis, there is a statistical benefit in terms of recovery time. It's a 4-day benefit, so patients who receive the drug remdesivir received an 11-day overall time to resolution, whereas people who received placebo was a 15-day time to resolution.
And we've got Gilead shares down now by 0.8%, $82.44. Facebook shares rallying after the company reported results that passed expectations and helped ease concerns about weakness in the digital advertising market. Facebook shares up now by 5.2%. Apple, by the way, and Amazon will both be reporting after the closing bell. Tesla shares, they're trading lower. Earnings did beat estimates, but short seller David Einhorn of Greenlight Capital is questioning Tesla's billing practices again. Tesla shares now lower by 1.5%. Recapping, equities lower with the S&P down 25, a drop of 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much. Let's head to New Jersey now. The state's governor there, having met with President Trump earlier, back in his home state, giving an update. Phil Murphy.
House and reversing course after years of budgetary mismanagement, by the way, on both sides of the aisle. We cannot have that progress stopped in its tracks, nor should we be gutting the very programs that our people and our state rely upon to lift ourselves up throughout our recovery. And this money is not a bailout. It is about funding our response and keeping our police, firefighters, EMTs, educators, and other frontline workers on the job. We need the federal government as a partner in our restart and recovery, just as they have been in our mitigation. We have pointed New Jersey in a new, more responsible and sustainable direction, and we need to be able to stay pointed in that direction. At every stage, this has been a team effort, and there's no reason for that to stop now, and especially as we approach the time when we're going to need our partners the most. As I said, it was a very good and productive conversation, and I'm happy to report that it has already produced important results for our state. I'm proud to announce that New Jersey is receiving 550,000 new COVID-19 test kits and 750,000 swabs from the federal government. This is a tremendous boost to our overall testing capacity, and as I have noted many times already, having a robust testing program is not just a key thing in the here and now, but a key principle for our being able to get back on the road to recovery. We've also secured a commitment that 358 nursing homes in New Jersey will be receiving a direct shipment of PPE or personal protective equipment from the federal government. And that will include roughly 220,000 masks, 19,000 goggles, 200,000 gowns, and 1 million gloves. For this in particular, I want to thank both the President and Rear Admiral John Polowczyk for their assistance. This proves that it is possible to put people over politics. It's no secret that the President and I disagree on some things, but that's not going to stop me from doing everything I can to make sure that New Jersey has all the resources we need to move forward. My focus is on getting things done in this unprecedented pandemic for all 9 million people who call our state home. Again, I am grateful to President Trump, Vice President Pence, Ambassador Dr. Birx, who is with us today, and so many others on their team, including in the Oval Office for our discussions, a lot of Jersey folks. In addition to the President, who knows the state very well, I want to thank in particular Jared Kushner, Kellyanne Conway, and Larry Kudlow, each of them a New Jersey product, and the entire team for their willingness to work with us throughout this process. And I look forward to our continued work. Allow me, if I could, to switch gears, and let's go to today's updated numbers and charts, and may this never be about just numbers and charts. Today, we're announcing an additional 2,633 positive test results for a statewide total of 118,652. Looking at the graph, we see the uptick from today's number, but we know we can just as easily push that back down. And if you look at the total number of cases, more people have exited the 2-week incubation window, roughly 69,200 of them, that have received positive test results over the past 2 weeks. And that number, by the way, is 49,400. And across New Jersey, the rate of doubling new cases continues slowing in most counties. And you see that lighter shade. You've got a lot more counties in that over 30 days that it takes to spread this virus. And that's good news. We need that map to continue to get to the lightest shade possible for all of our counties. And remember, the southern counties, while the days to doubling may not be as notable as those that are in the central and north, the fact of the matter is those numbers are lower, and the virus, as Judy has reminded us, sort of migrated through the state from north to central and now more so in the south. The only way we can get New Jersey on the road back is if we all continue to practice social distancing over the coming weeks to really bend this curve down and to keep it going down. And let me be perfectly clear, this upcoming weekend with the reopening of our parks and golf courses will be a crucial test. And this is a test that we must pass. And we will be closely monitoring what happens at our parks and on our golf courses to ensure that we pass this test. As I said yesterday, we are placing tremendous trust in you to keep up with your social distancing. In fact, you have earned that trust. You've done an extraordinary job. But if we see this weekend what we saw that first weekend in April, I will not hesitate to reverse course and close our parks again. That will bring me no joy, by the way. Bring me absolutely no joy, but we'll have no choice. We must be focused. We know that the overwhelming majority of you have taken this to heart and have been doing the right things. Do not let a minority of knuckleheads ruin this. In our healthcare system, as of last night's reporting, as you can see, there were 6,137 patients hospitalized for COVID-19. We continue to see this number decreasing, and that is a very good sign. In just 1 week, in fact, the number of hospitalized patients has dropped by 15%. Our field medical stations reported 50 patients. There were 1,765 patients reported in either critical or intensive care, and this continues the overall downward trend across the past week. Ventilator use currently stands at 1,271, and this is the lowest that number has been since April 4th. There were 502 new hospitalizations yesterday, and on discharges, 514 live patients were released from our hospitals yesterday, which is a slight increase. Again, these are real numbers showing real and so far positive trends. This data is a crucial measure of how we're doing in terms of both public health and healthcare readiness. If we continue to push the lines and those graphs downward as we have been, and I say that because these lines don't go down on their own. They only go down when we keep doing what we, all 9 million of us, are doing. We keep doing that in our job and doing our part. We get back on the road much more sooner and much more prepared for what's ahead. So again, remember, public health creates economic health. Public health creates economic health. Now today, with the heaviest of hearts, we are reporting 460 additional deaths from COVID-19.
All right, you have been listening to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy giving some commentary about what's going on in his state. Also giving some comment. I've got some commentary going on in my house right now. People not happy about maybe taking a nap. In any case.
But it mirrors what we just heard from Steve Pagliuca, because he talked about it, two-pronged, making sure that people are safe. Like, this is important, and that's how you bring back the economy. And that's what we're hearing from the governor right now. He said public health creates economic health, and that's crucial in order to turning things around. And in order, I gotta love the screaming in the background. Yeah. Now they're like a 2-year-old, man. They've got the strongest lungs.
They really do. They really do. It's pretty remarkable how much they can carry in a relatively
doesn't need a mic.
Small house. Yeah, no mic needed. No mic needed for Alice Kelly. In any case, that's what we heard from the governor of New Jersey. Yeah. And he paid a visit to the president earlier, which is really important as they figure out what's going on. This cooperation is going to be incredibly necessary.
Well, asking for help from the federal government, essentially, and the government not committing to any kind of assistance when it comes to states. And we are hearing this from certainly the hardest hit states, and we'll see if something along those lines evolves eventually. But you're right. He was meeting with the president to talk specifically about that. So important. All right. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg. I love a little 2-year-old screaming in the background. I really do.
Yeah.
Takes me back.
Well, different sort of screaming that we're hearing from the Pacific Northwest, taking us back to the early 90s, right?
Yes. Dave Wilson, come on in. Your chart of the day. And as Jason
I got
said,
news for you, Jason. Your location is a little bit off.
Is it East Coast grunge?
No.
Oh.
Not Pacific North. What? Is that a California band?
No.
Is it a West Coast?
No.
Is it a U.S.?
No.
Was that not?
Oh,
was that
so it's outside the U.S.
Correct.
Europe? Is it Europe?
Right.
All right. Talk to me, Dave.
We're talking Bush.
Oh, nice.
The UK band.
UK, there
Maybe
you go.
Maybe best known because their lead singer is the ex-husband of Gwen Stefani these days, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, Come Down. That's the name of the song, and that seems to be what's happening.
I thought you just said to me, calm down.
No, come down.
Got it.
All right. I'll
Dave.
let Jason tell you to calm down. That's not my place.
No, we need Alice Kelly to calm down right now. By the way, here at Sleepy, I can't even tell you all the things I've got going on right now in Sleepy Hollow. I've got my neighbor outside showing me signs about what the headlines that we should be doing. I've got Alice screaming. It's just one of those days.
It's a crazy Thursday. All right, Dave, so take it away on this crazy Thursday.
Crazy Thursday. Well, we've had a bit of a reversal today, you might say. I mean, biggest companies in the NASDAQ holding up relatively well. We know that if you look at the NASDAQ 100 index, they're up for the year. And, what we saw with smaller companies early in the week, not today, the Russell 2000 taking a bit of a hit. And what's interesting, though, is just if you look back over the last 4 months now, I mean, you had seen the NASDAQ 100 exchange-traded fund, the one under the ticker QQQ from Invesco, the ratio between that and a Russell 2000 ETF from iShares, the ticker IWM, was up 42% going into mid-April. And it got close to a record we saw back in 2000. Now, the Russell 2000 ETF's only been around since about the middle of 2000, so it kind of missed the peak from the internet rally of the 1990s into 2000. So, it just got so close to that, and then it backed off. And I bring this up because, I got this chart in my email yesterday from Dave Halloran, who's over at Greenwood Capital Associates. He's their director of portfolio strategies. They do a lot of ETF trading. And the way he figures it, we're kind of setting up for a major top in these larger companies. The one, you know the names. We've got Amazon and Apple reporting earnings after the close, et cetera, relative to the smaller ones in the Russell. I mean, that's really been a story of the bull market going back to 2009, and it's picked up even as the bull market turned into a bear market. And it's only in the last couple of weeks that things have started to turn in a meaningful way. So it's interesting to see that kind of transition. We'll see if it lasts, but in the meantime, if you want to know what I'm talking about, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Very cool chart. I guess what blows my mind a little bit is just it's a reminder of the swings that we've had in terms of obviously in the financial markets and certainly in the equity markets, Dave, but just in the relationships between different sections and sectors of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this business with the NASDAQ 100 has been going on, like I say, for more than a decade. It's just that this year it really accelerated. And, analysts like to talk about things like blow-off tops, and it certainly has the look of one if you check out this ratio.
All right. Well, and we appreciate the throwback reference. I can't believe I didn't get Bush. That's good. It's not even a deep cut. It's just I confess I get a lot of those early 90s bands confused. I'm sorry, Dave.
It's okay, Jason. You can't get everything right all the time.
I know.
You were distracted by your children.
That's right.
Oh, come on.
I might have been a little distracted by someone right outside.
What's wrong with that?
He's trying to help me out.
Occasionally get things wrong.
Occasionally get things wrong. I know. It happens. All right. You're listening to Bloomberg.
Don't blame the 2-year-old. Don't you dare, little Alice.
Can't blame that just adorable little screaming 2-year-old. All right. Let's go to Charlie Pellet now. He's got a Bloomberg Business Flash. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much. Here's what's going on. We got the bulls screaming. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all decidedly lower right now. NASDAQ down 0.6%, lower by 54 points. S&P is slumping 33 points, down 1.1%. The Dow down 323 points. That is a drop right now of 1.3%. Wells Fargo said to be shifting energy bankers to focus on bankruptcies. This according to a Reuters report. 10-year, the yield there 0.63%. Gold down 1.5%, tumbling $26 the ounce at $16.87. Crude surging 25%, $18.82. Twitter after earnings down 9.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's time to take a look at the close. Drive to the close with Cole Smead back with us, President Portfolio Manager at Smead Capital Management. Roughly $1.6 billion in assets under management on the phone from Phoenix on this Thursday. And on a day where, as we heard from Charlie, we've been bouncing around and we are off our lows, but still down across the board on those major equity averages. Cole, nice to have you back with us. How are you doing? How's your family doing?
We're doing really well. I mean, all things considered, we got 3 kids doing, online learning, and it makes being in an office look way easier.
Yeah, that's really what we've heard. That's so really true, right? Everybody's talking about, if you didn't respect teachers before, which is, first of all, shame on you, you definitely do now, because it is tough work.
I remember reading something called, you may have seen the same thing, that Shonda Rhimes, of course, famous showrunner of all these amazing shows that have been on television, said after teaching, it was something like, after teaching my kids for an hour and a half, I now think that every teacher should make $1 billion a week. So it definitely checks out. Well, meanwhile, what's happening in the markets from your perspective? Because, for folks out there looking at their 401ks, if they dare, they actually see a nice little optimistic U of some sort. How should people be feeling? Because I'm still nervous.
Yeah, and that's a great question. There's quite a contrast in the market, and you guys were just touching at this, where you're kind of looking at blow-off tops, as you just mentioned, in certain names, and the market just continues to get narrower in that. At the same time, what the depravity of what went on the last 60 days, there are just distinct areas and places that there have been losers. So, a couple of days ago, I saw the stat was that the market was only 17% below its high on average, but if you look at the median stock, it's still down 28%. And that shows you the chasm between the haves and the have-nots. And today is just kind of a picture of the haves in terms of, who reported, what they're excited about. But that is not, in our opinion, where the opportunity is coming out of this. That was the rearview mirror.
So tell us about investment choices you have or have not been making. You run a value fund, you run, some other funds. I'm just curious how you've been either seeing opportunities or still fighting to find some.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So just to give a sense, I'll give you guys a sense. We're entering an era where stocks are probably only going to make 2% compounded over the next 2 years. That means roughly dividends and, maybe some dividend growth, but maybe it's a little higher at 3%. And that's for the That being said, you can go into places like the subprime auto loan market right now and go look at a company like Credit Acceptance Corporation, who we just got involved for the first time ever in this. It's an incredibly high return on equity business that, you hear subprime autos and you think, Cole, are you crazy? And the answer is that space has just disappeared in terms of who's willing to provide liquidity. And so I'll never forget, Richard Bernstein many years ago said, you want to invest like the mafia. You go into businesses at times when nobody else wants to be in that business, and you provide capital, but you want to extract really high returns on a legal basis. And that's what we can do with a business like that today. There's other places like the energy business, the Wells Fargo comment, distress. That's mafia-like investing opportunities, and there's particular places for that, and a lot of the blow-off tops you're seeing. There's money is available to fly into that as possible.
Right. Rich Bernstein, of course, the longtime strategist over at Merrill. Used to talk to him a lot of time. And then moved on to, I think, Eaton Vance, and then is now on his own. But, watched the markets for a long time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cole.
I was just going to say, where is capital scarce is what should make you draw out of this. I wrote a piece this last week talking about effortless money, as Buffett quoted in his 2000 shareholder letter, is what we've seen in the VC world in the last 5 to 7 years. Effortless money is what he referred to that as. And I say that because the question is, the markets can often augment economics or create what we call financialized demand. And if that is showing up in your business, you should be very scared, because funding can change quickly, as we've seen in the environment. Where will funding change that will change the economics of industries? The same fragile customers that are asking for rent abatements in the commercial space right now, that are in the startup land, are going to have to ask for rent abatements on hosting and maybe might be walking away from digital ads at some point if they can't fund their business.
Yeah.
No one is pricing that risk in the markets right now.
Yeah, I do think a lot about that. I mean, we're starting to see that around the edges. I mean, especially when you look across some of the media names and things like that, you know, budgets start to shrink. And you're right, there are these sort of ripple effects. And we talk about it all the time from the consumer perspective, too. You know, a change in, you know, not going out to eat has much more dramatic effect than just, oh, okay, well, you know, maybe people are tightening their budgets a little bit, especially at the scale that we are talking about here, Cole. So what do you, I guess, with all of that, what do you worry about the most, and how does that translate into action or maybe inaction when it comes to someone's portfolio?
Yeah, no, you know, what do we worry about the most in the interim here is, you know, watching these blow-off tops taking the market to a higher level. It's not the average stock. So that just looks like it's going to set up some near-term disappointment. We are rallying off the low and in kind of a bear market rally style, in our opinion. It doesn't mean you can't find great bargains out there, but that's not what's hitting wonderful new highs and taking the market higher. Where you have to go into industries like consumer, like mall REITs, we've been a buyer in Macerich and Simon Property Group. Those kind of places offer wonderful potential, wonderful prices, and they can gain the benefit of the reversion of the economy back to normal.
Wow, that's a bold choice.
I got to jump in because it's like when my husband says to me, just because it's on sale, honey, doesn't mean it's a great deal. And I do.
Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. And when we come out of this, we do know that things are going to change. To your point, that's no question. Things are going to change. But how fun is it to do what we've just got done doing? So we know it will be different than that. What have we been doing? We've been sitting at home, trying to entertain ourselves in many ways. If we don't have a backyard or we don't have a front driveway, we're doing that in a very small area. We're going to want to get out. This might be the summer when states open up. This might be the summer that no one wants to be home.
And I will say, and Jason, I don't know how much you think about this. I know because you have, you know, a lot of discussions around your dinner table like we do, and I'm assuming you do too, Cole, is that, you know, we like to be around people and we are adaptable and we will figure out how to do it in a safe way. And I think that's what industries and leaders, just like we talked with Steve Pagliuca, you know, we're going to all figure this out and it will be different, but we'll figure out how to get back to doing some of those things that we took for granted beforehand, Cole.
We agree. 16-year-old girls, they're going to want to show up at Ulta and they're going to want to get their makeup done. Why? It's somewhere to go. It's somewhere to be around people. That's likely to be closer to a mall. We're going to want to go entertain ourselves because we're deprived for fun.
Yeah, I just it's so interesting to try and figure out, you know, what the patterns of behavior are going to be, and you know how far back we go. And I sort of go back to what Mike McKee, the metaphor that he gave us, Carol. This notion of, you know, it's not a V, it's not a U, it's a swoosh.
It's a Nike swoosh.
Yeah, so
I love that.
I really like that. Yeah, it's a good one. All right, Cole Smead, thank you so much, President and Portfolio Manager for Smead Capital Management, looking after about $1.6 billion. Join us on the phone from Phoenix. Coming up, we're going to bring you the close of trading on this red day on Wall Street, Carol.
Yeah, we've been bouncing around, but we're off our lows, but nonetheless, we're across the board. We've got a lot of big tech earnings, though, coming your way after the closing bell. We'll be breaking those down and seeing what that aftermarket trade is. This is Bloomberg Business Week, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
The starting gun for your weekday.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on, we had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King Podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, our writers fan out to report from across the city at the height of the coronavirus outbreak in New York.
I won't say it's business as usual, but, we still have responsibilities and we are handling everything. But, I'm not going to let COVID beat me.
That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelletta. Down Thursday, sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Tommy Gannon all alone. He's Assistant Supervisor of Facilities, ringing that closing bell as we await a whole slew of earnings. Fasten your seatbelts because we're about to hear from Apple, Amazon, Gilead Sciences, Visa, MGM Resorts, and United Holdings. We're ready, and we'll have those as they become available. But first, this headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. U.S. COVID-19 cases up 1.2%. That is the slowest pace this month. Stocks finished well off session lows. It was a down day. The Dow dropping 302 points at the close, down 1.2%. S&P 500 index down 27, down 0.9%, holding above 2,900. The S&P at 2911. NASDAQ a down day there, dropping 25 points for NASDAQ. That was a decline of 0.3%. Your 10-year down 3/32 with a yield of 0.63%. Gold slumping 1.5%, down $25 the ounce at $16.87. Crude, a major story today. West Texas Intermediate crude surging 26% to $19.01. Bottom line, it was a down day on Wall Street. As for earnings in the markets, Charles Dumas is chief economist at T.S. Lombard.
The fact is that the recession is going to hammer earnings in big time, and so it's only if you think the recession is going to be replaced by a huge bounce back that you can possibly justify the kind of pricing we're seeing in the markets, and I don't think you can expect a huge bounce back.
And we are getting earnings right now out of Amgen. First quarter adjusted EPS, $4.17. Estimates were for $3.80. Amazon first quarter net sales, $75.5 billion. Estimates, $73.74 billion. Gilead first quarter adjusted EPS, $1.68. Estimates were for $1.57. We've got you covered on earnings. Again, recapping the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ, all lower. S&P down 27, a drop of 0.9%. I'm Charlie Pelletta, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Oh, come on, Simone. Shake him, not stir.
Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's get right to it because, as Charlie mentioned, we've got a slew of earnings coming out after the closing bell, and that's certainly going to shape the trade here in the aftermarket and certainly into the Friday trade. So let's start with Amazon. That stock's down a little bit here in the after hours, about 2.6% to the downside. First quarter net sales, Jason, that was a beat, $75.5 billion versus an estimate of $73.74 billion. First quarter EPS, a little bit light, $5.01 versus $6.27 was the estimate. Forward looking, this is important, sees second quarter net sales of 75 to 81 billion. That's a little bit of a range. Estimate out there is of 77.93. The company says it has procured 100 million face masks. And it also sees spending about $4 billion or more on COVID-related expenses. Says the crisis also the hardest time that we have ever faced, and that the crisis is demonstrating our adaptability and durability. But this is a company that certainly has been in the news, right? We're all counting on it, relying on it to get all those things we need. The stock's up almost 34% in the regular trade year to date. So maybe a little nervousness about the outlook, perhaps stock down to almost 3% here in the aftermath.
Well, and the run-up, I mean, obviously has been huge. I mean, and we know anecdotally so many people are using Amazon, relying on Amazon. We also know that they do have some operational challenges, and they seem to be alluding to those and saying
spending a lot on it, right? You know, in terms of having to protect workers and what that entails, which is crucial in order to keep their business going, but also the right thing to do to make sure that their workers are safe and staying safe. Where do you want to go next?
Well, another name that obviously people have been watching so closely is Gilead coming in. I think you heard Charlie mention this. First quarter adjusted EPS coming in at $1.68. The estimate there had been for $1.57. Gilead saying it took steps to expand remdesivir manufacturing production. That's why everyone's talking about this company so much lately, is they are literally right at the core of what could help us get past this and what could help treat this virus. We should also mention, speaking of the virus and reaction, we are awaiting some comments from President Trump in Washington. We will take you there when he begins speaking, Carol.
We will indeed. And Gilead, by the way, is up about 29% year to date so far in the regular trade. And you're right, the potential for it to at least have a treatment to treat those who have are tested positive and have contracted it. Stock's just up a hair, actually bouncing around, up a little bit, down a little bit.
It's essentially flat. I mean, it's moving in a very, very small range and showing unch a lot of the time.
Unch. Let's talk about Visa, because this stock is up more than 1% here in the after hours. And Charlie teased it for us because that stock also coming out with its earnings. Second quarter adjusted EPS, it's a slight beat, $1.39, 4 cents better than what Wall Street was forecasting. Second quarter net revenue of $5.9 billion. That's down 2.5% quarter over quarter. It is not, I've heard this before, not providing a full year outlook. Second quarter EPS $1.38 versus $1.31 year over year. Says its business model, it's resilient.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, we could all use a little more resilience in our lives. We also know, I mean, you know, Visa and Amazon are sort of complicated at this moment because we know people are using a lot of these services, really eagerly looking forward. Also, we're going to hear this at the bottom of the hour to hear from Apple, obviously. And we're going to be visiting with our own John Ehrlichman about both Amazon and Apple coming up. Want to do the VIX?
Yeah, let's do it. The volatility index report, especially as we saw stocks bounce around a little bit. The VIX on this Thursday looks like a jump up in about 11% here, so up about 3.4 points, closing at 34.65. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave!
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with us, not stumping me with British grunge bands anymore, but talking about Olin. Is it Olin Corp? Is that how it's pronounced?
That's right, Jason. It's a familiar name to pool owners. The company supplies chlorine for pools, along with industrial bleach and a number of other chemicals. It also owns Winchester Ammunition, which makes ammo for government and commercial customers. Olin was founded in 1892 and went public in 1917. The ticker is OLN. The company's shares have been up and down during the past 4 years. They rallied to a record in January 2018 and then gave back the entire gain and then some. Last month, they fell to the lowest price since 1990. While Olin bounced off that low, the rebound was set back after the company released first quarter results late yesterday. They showed a wider loss than analysts expected based on the Bloomberg survey. The company had to shut down the Chinese plant temporarily because of the coronavirus. Rail disruptions in Canada and a strike at a French supplier also contributed to the loss. Now, Olin said it expects to see weaker demand this quarter. The outlook and results combined to send the company's shares to their biggest loss since July 2016. They fell about 18%.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a big move.
It's a big move. Carol is literally speechless when it comes to Olin Corp. I think you sort of threw me a little bit when you said that they are, providing pool chemicals and ammunition. That's not. Those are not adjacent businesses, as they say, Dave.
No, not exactly. I mean, the ammo business, relatively small, a little more than 10% of revenue. The rest is all in different types of chemicals.
Yeah. All right. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Let's get to Ed Baxter quickly for some world and national headlines. He's in San Francisco. Hey, Ed.
Yeah, Jason, of course, this is as we await the president. He is supposed to talk about elder care and amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll go there as soon as he steps up. At least 31 states are planning on some kind of partial opening now in the next few days. And Dr. Anthony Fauci says on NBC he hopes that those states are not rushing it.
But you have to have the core principles of the guidelines. You can't just leap over things and get into a situation where you're really tempting a rebound. That's the thing I get concerned about. I hope they don't do that.
Dr. Fauci also said a vaccine could be ready by January. And New Jersey now has a reminder things are not over, reporting the most deaths on record for one day, 460. Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing a large-scale plan to trace all coronavirus cases on a scale never used before to be able to identify and notify people if they've been in contact with a patient. The effort is being led by Bloomberg LP founder Mike Bloomberg. Meanwhile, Governor Andrew Cuomo says there'll be a full-scale cleaning of the subway system.
Just think about it. The entire public transit system in downstate New York will be disinfected every 24 hours.
And in California, Governor Gavin Newsom says people at Orange County beaches did not adhere to the separation policies, and so
we're going to have a temporary pause on the beaches down there, state, local beaches. We want to work very closely with local elected officials, and we're committed to doing that. And if we can get some framework and guidelines to get this right, we can reopen very, very quickly.
Okay, and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, guys, says the UK is now on the downward slope of infections. This was his first media appearance since recovering from COVID-19 himself. All right, Jason, Carol?
All right, Ed, thank you so much. I guess not surprising to hear that reaction from Governor Gavin Newsom after those pictures that we saw coming out of the weekend. Just shut them down.
Right.
Just shut it down.
Because, and this is something in talking with Steve Pagliuca, about this is a virus, and he talked a lot about something we talked about, I think, early on. We were learning about the virus, R naught.
R naught.
And it means that it can grow exponentially. And so it doesn't take much to change an improving curve and trend and move it in the other direction to be one that is getting worse. And so you can understand why Governor Newsom is a little nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as Ed said, we're at this moment where you've got a lot of governors making decisions to reopen. The governor of Georgia, who's been especially aggressive, I think, in reopening planning to lift shelter in place for that state, after going through sort of I would say gradual reopening, but a pretty quick reopening starting last Friday, moving into this week, and now sort of taking it a step further. But, still hearing a lot of cautionary notes from both the governors of New Jersey and New York. So meanwhile, it is all earnings all the time here in the aftermarket, Carol.
So let's talk Amazon, because that stock in the aftermarket is down about 3.7%. It's had quite a run, a bullish run in 2020 so far, despite what we've seen in many other sectors and names within the market. But the company talks about, and I think this is one of the important headlines, sees a $4 billion cost in COVID-19 costs specifically, and that's certainly affecting the guidance of the company, and did talk about a little bit of an outlook. Sees second quarter net sales of 75 to 81 billion. The estimate among the Wall Street and financial community is for 77.93 billion. So a little bit of a range, and maybe kind of bringing that in a little bit with a lower bound range there. So that's maybe why you're seeing a little bit of nervousness in the stock. But again, let's not forget, everybody, it's had quite a run up.
Yeah,
we're waiting for Apple. That's going to be key. That breaks about 18 minutes from now, so we'll be looking for those numbers as well.
And we're going to check in with John Ehrlichman, our colleague up at BNN, to tell us a little bit about what's going on with Amazon. Meanwhile, Visa, we mentioned them as well, and Gilead, that's a name I feel like we keep coming back to because we're going to keep talking about Gilead and whether remdesivir is in fact going to be the therapeutic piece of this, an important piece of the therapeutic treatment. Of course, as we know from talking to all of our experts, you've got the therapeutic, you've got the serologicals, which is the antibody testing, and then, of course, the vaccine. And that is a ways off, although maybe only 9 months away if Bill Gates' most optimistic view of the world.
He gave a range, too, of 9 to 18 months.
9 months to 2 years is what Bill Gates said. 18 months, I believe, is what Dr. Fauci has been saying. But even Dr. Fauci, being a little bit more optimistic, and especially when it comes to what we've heard from Gilead and others. I did want to see what Gilead was doing.
And I want to mention Visa. Visa is just up a little bit, 0.2% roughly, after that company reported their earnings after the closing bell. Second quarter adjusted EPS, 4 cents better than what Wall Street was expecting, $1.39. Revenues, $5.9 billion. That's down 2.5% quarter to quarter, not providing a full year outlook. And again, saying its business model is resilient. People are ordering a lot of things from home and potentially using their Visa card. Stock's down about 5% so far this year. And Gilead?
Gilead, it is down a little more than 1% at this point. I mean, as you say, it's had, I'm sorry, I was looking at Visa just there.
That's okay.
Hold one moment, please.
I'm going to mention Whirlpool. That company also out with their earnings, and the stock's up about 2.6% here in the after hours. Let me just go to some of the headlines. Sees year net sales decline of about 13 to 18%. So watching that. First quarter ongoing EPS, 282 versus 311 year over year. And, that stock, though.
I was accidentally right.
You're accidentally right.
Gilead is
you made
also
a good
down.
Guess? You were lucky?
Yeah, I made a good guess. Gilead is also down about 1.4%, which is the same as Visa. So lucky for me that I wasn't like, it's down 1% and it's up 18, down about 1%. So a lot of enthusiasm there. All right, let's get to John Ehrlichman. Love catching up with him. I feel like it's been a while. It's been a minute, as the kids say, since we talked to John Ehrlichman. He follows so much tech. He joins us. He's the anchor, of course, of BNN Bloomberg's The Open. So let's talk a little Amazon, John Ehrlichman. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So it's nice to be with you guys. These are pretty incredible set of quarterly results. Yeah. It sort of speaks to, but it also speaks to Jeff Bezos. The thing that immediately, I didn't catch what you guys just said there, but that he basically wanted to make sure shareholders are sitting down when they look at these numbers, because they've committed to spending $4 billion in the second quarter to COVID-19 related expenses. Amazon is one of those companies that on some levels you never quite knew what they were going to do with the money they were bringing in, and this is a complicated time, but the revenue is coming in quickly, but it's a complicated story for Amazon because, yes, they're on the front lines and they're generating a lot of revenue, but they need to take care of their employees, and I think Jeff Bezos is trying to make a statement with that spending that they're going to do in the second quarter.
But they've got to do it, right? I mean, this is a company, right, we all have been tapping into while we're sheltering in place, sheltering at home. But there's also been those stories about their workers and what their workers are being exposed to. So they've got to make sure that they're spending to protect their workers, because that's what keeps the company going. And it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely, Carol. Yeah, it's true. And, there's been a lot of reporting around, Jeff Bezos's role and coming in a bigger way. Not that he's ever far from, having his finger on everything, but clearly he has come back in a big way and wanted to make that statement. If we want to talk about the numbers a little bit here, the fact that they generated $75 billion in the quarter, I'm just looking at the growth. This is a company that's now 20, we still think of them as young in e-commerce and that kind of stuff, but they're more than 25 years old now. And here you are off a base of $60 billion last year, generating more than 25% growth year over year. It's just astounding. I was looking at the breakdown in the quarter, and there was actually stronger than average growth in North America. Looks like internationally, probably because of some of the issues in Europe, they had a little bit slower growth there. But then there's the cloud business. We talk about how we're all home, we're using internet services. You've got Amazon Web Services that just generated more than $10 billion in the quarter, and that's growth of about 30%. So, I think longer term, the numbers, once again, they make your eyes pop out of your head. It's a reason why Amazon stock had been soaring into the close. But then there's always this story of what's Amazon going to do with the profits? Right. In a way, piling it back into the business. But these are unprecedented times, so essentially piling that money into the COVID-19 expenses that they're dealing with.
Well, and it is amazing. The other sort of eye-popping figure is hiring 175,000 people for higher demand and assistance. And you do wonder, as someone who's watched this company for a long time, I know, John, how this changes the way Amazon operates, both, from a income statement, balance sheet perspective, but even just, day to day as a company, given that they are going to have to worry much more about safety, and the scale of this company demands that, big figures like that.
And if I can just, add on to that, this is a company that originally was all about saving the rainforest, right? And I do wonder about the societal responsibilities that Amazon will see because of its role in the world. I do wonder if they step up and take on a bigger role.
And I also think Jeff Bezos is kind of generally looking down the road at what the future looks like, and I think this is a very clear sign that someone like him, who a lot of people look to, sees a newly defined world because of COVID-19. Something that really stood out for me recently was when they went full steam ahead with their own internal testing. Because I think if you see Amazon doing that, every other company on the planet has to think about, look, we can work with the government closely on testing, but some of this ultimately is going to fall into the hands of businesses feeling their own confidence that they are, feeling safe about that issue going forward when we don't really know when we're going to have some kind of vaccine. And I think the other part of it is just going back to the actual number of people being hired. 10 years ago, they had about 30,000 employees, and coming into today, they were fast approaching 1 million. Right. All right. So they've just got an absolute army, and then you think of everybody associated with that army that is technically employed by Amazon. And I think you guys said it right. Like they have to ensure that they are properly protecting everybody associated with that. I do wonder, though, look, this has been the stock market's interpretation of Amazon this year is this has just pushed e-commerce, even further into the future, because as much as we talk about e-commerce dominating, it's still a pretty small slice of retail sales. I think we're going to obviously see by the end of the second quarter as a percentage of retail sales what e-commerce looks like. But, you know, do they want that? You saw it with Netflix too, right? Reed Hastings didn't really want to do high fives about the fact that people are using their streaming service at home. This is not a very happy time. And so
I thought his tone, I have to say, John, I thought his tone was perfect, right? I thought it was really kind of spot on in many ways.
You gotta balance that out, and I mean, Jeff Bezos is a pretty rich guy, and he knows that the world knows how rich he is, and gets richer every time the stock goes up. And I think people on a certain level are sensitive to that. But beyond that, just look, he's got to make sure that this company can constantly well positioned for the future. I mean, it is a statement to say, look, we would have normally, made $4 billion in profit for our second quarter, and we're going to take all of that and maybe a little bit more and put it on. It is. And then it puts pressure on everybody else, too, quite frankly.
But it's also a reminder, go back to Business Roundtable, and everybody said there's multiple stakeholders out there, right? It's not just about, the share price going up and up and up and just making sure profits grow. That's all we care about. It's also about taking care of your community, and that community means your customers and your workers. And that's, I think, an important thing, and a company like Amazon can really make a statement by doing this.
I think that's absolutely true. They make that point in everything they're talking about for their employees. I mean, I can't remember when they would have had a set of financial results where, virtually like a huge chunk of what they are saying is really more focused on the employees. Most of the time, they just want to tell you about all the new things they've been working on, but really they are focusing on the team that they've been building to ensure health and safety for employees and their contractors, all of the millions of face masks that they've been focused on procuring. As I mentioned, they've got that team now that is working on trying to figure out testing. And I think a lot of people, quite frankly, are looking to see how successful Amazon will be on that front, because that ultimately could be the model that others follow. And, and I think they make a point of pointing out, at least in certain parts of the world, including here in Canada and the U.S. and the U.K., the increases in pay, because look, there are tensions that have built over the years about that issue for their employees. So
Well,
so John, I got to ask you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you on the other side of the numbers coming out. But tell us about what we expect to hear from Apple, because that's obviously the other big name that all eyes are going to be on right now. What are we thinking about?
So I think in a word, it's the third quarter outlook that's likely going to matter, because even though Apple's stock has held in just fine this year, this is going to be a very tough quarter for them. I mean, you look at just the challenges they've had. They don't have as many stores open, right? Through all this started, we saw Apple dealing with this in China. So it's a little different than Amazon, where revenue goes up. Apple's quarterly revenue may have already peaked. There's sort of a new chapter of Apple. So we could be looking at COVID-19 related impact on their revenue in the current quarter. So I think we're going to have to look to see what Apple's saying about the rest of the year, as they are already starting to try to get back to some kind of normal in other parts of the world, like China. That could be more important than what just happened in the last 3 months, because, look, this is a company that has not only had issues with selling product through retail channels, they're having supply chain issues.
Right.
We've been reporting on that for weeks now, right? So that creates a whole bunch of complications for Apple, and I think because there have been some questions about when some of the new iPhone models will ultimately get produced, and usually the second half, sort of last final quarter of the year is when they start rolling out those new products. I think people want to feel good that Apple is feeling relatively confident heading into the final quarter of 2020, just given this has been such a sort of a write-off quarter for a lot of companies so far. I wouldn't take Apple out of that group. I think they're right alongside those companies, as opposed to an Amazon, which we were all wondering, boy, how much can this company generate? And, they generated $75 billion for 3 months of work. I mean, it's pretty astonishing.
The numbers here, I mean, John, you and I especially have been doing this for a long time. And I mean, and even the figures that you gave about Amazon's employment figures, I mean, it's staggering to think about the size and scope of this. Do you have a sense of how much this has derailed sort of Apple's roadmap or the rollout of new products and services?
Well, I think you could make the argument, Jason, that on some levels, COVID-19 came at a time when Apple was ready for it. The fact that they've shifted, they don't need to sell as many devices to make the business work. It's really more about the devices that are in your hand, and we're all. Right. I mean, I'm talking to you on an iPhone right now, right? We've got the devices in front of us. So,
John, hang on. We've got to run because President Trump is making some remarks, but we really appreciate your analysis, as always, on Amazon and also on Apple. Let's head to President Trump delivering some remarks on protecting America's seniors. It's happening in the East Room of the White House.
Seema Verma, thank you. Great job. FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor and Chief of National Guard Bureau General Joseph Lengal. Thanks also to Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, my friend. Thank you very much, Bill. Great job you're doing. It's great being with you, too. And many outstanding advocates for America's seniors who are here with us today. Thank you all very much. As we tragically have seen, the virus poses the greatest risk to older Americans. Together as one nation, we mourn for every precious life that has been lost. And there have been many. There have been many. We're so saddened by it. Through our aggressive actions and the devotion of our doctors and nurses, however, we have held our fatality rate far below hard-hit other countries such as Spain and Italy and United Kingdom and Sweden. We're way below other countries. We're deploying every tool, resource, and power at our disposal to protect our seniors and Americans of every age and background. Early on, we implemented life-saving travel restrictions and directed billions of dollars toward the development of therapies and vaccines, and that's moving along rapidly. We've moved at a speed that people are absolutely stunned to see. We accelerated treatments, including remdesivir, which is reportedly showing encouraging preliminary results. That was the very big story yesterday. It was announced by Gilead. In early March, my administration advised all nursing homes to suspend all medically unnecessary visits to help slow the spread and to protect our seniors, and especially in our nursing homes. They are having a hard time in those nursing homes. We took action to step up enforcement of infectious disease standards at nursing homes all across America. We also acted swiftly to secure our veterans' healthcare facilities and deployed hundreds of VA staff to help out in nursing homes nationwide. And we're being helped very greatly by the passage of all of the things that we got passed, Robert, especially choice, so that people can go and see their doctor when they have to, and especially our seniors. We provided nearly $1 billion in grants to support home-delivered meals, in home care and other services that make it impossible for older people to just do what they want to do. We're helping older people.
All right, you're listening to President Trump in the East Room talking about protecting America's seniors. We'll continue to monitor and bring you the headlines. In the meanwhile, we do have some headlines crossing the Bloomberg terminal, and we're talking about Apple earnings. And the company second quarter revenue, $58.31 billion. That is above the estimates of $54.25. It's boosting its buyback to $50 billion. And CEO Tim Cook saying that the company saw a pickup in the second half of April. Keep in mind that they were shut down Right, for, I think, part of some of this reporting period. So some of what we've been under is certainly going to be in these numbers.
Yeah, stock is up just a touch, about 1.5%, now climbing up about 2%. Just briefly, United Airlines coming out with their numbers as well. First quarter adjusted loss per share of $2.57. The estimate, actually, that's a beat. The estimate had been for a loss of $3.37. We want to make sure those line up.
So let's go back to some of the headlines because there's lots. All right, so we said they boosted their buyback. They boosted their quarterly dividend to 82 cents a share from 77 cents. That's above what the street was looking for, which was 80 cents. Company says it's generating operating cash flow of $13.3 billion during the second quarter. That's coming from the CFO. Tim Cook saying late March, early April were, quote, very depressed, but saying a pickup caused by new products and economic stimulus. Says the second half of April improved relative to that. Reopen in Australia stores. They're going to be opening in 1 to 2 weeks. And said COVID-19 boosted the App Store, TV Plus, slowed ads, which we've heard from a lot of companies, certainly that play in the online ad space. And also talked a little bit about Apple Care, but says offices will not open until at least early June. That, according to Tim Cook, and stores to reopen in small numbers by mid-May. So starting to talk about that way back, certainly here when it comes to the U.S. and
all right,
elsewhere.
so speaking of the way back, he made his way back to us. We're dragging him back in. John Ehrlichman back with us as these numbers from Apple come across. And John, you had teed it up so nicely for us. Anything jumping out at you immediately other than, again, sort of the eye-popping numbers? That buyback is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think that was, I feel like all we've heard about for weeks now are companies cutting costs and cutting costs in the areas that shareholders generally, buy stocks for, things like stock buybacks and dividends, that kind of stuff. Apple, one of these unusual companies, they've just got so much cash that COVID-19 really doesn't derail the fact that they're, full of lots of money. And so they're in a position where they can boost the dividend, the quarterly dividend. They can boost the buyback significantly. They can do the kinds of things that shareholders want if they have less control over what we talked about earlier, which is the supply chain, those kinds of things.
So, listen, I just want to jump in because Ian King, our tech reporter at Bloomberg News, John, spoke with Tim Cook, or he sat down with the Bloomberg News team and said, we've seen a further change in the last part of March and first part of April. We're very depressed. And then we've seen a pickup relative to that period of time in the second half of April that I would attribute to partially the new products we were able to launch at the end of March and early April, the economic stimulus, and probably some level of people getting a bit more used to that. This is going to last a little while. That it's not really a short-term thing. Forgive me, I'm just kind of reading through here. So that's directly from Tim Cook.
And, I think we talked, Carol, about the fact that, okay, so what does that mean? I mean, if you're Apple, and generally you go through these cycles where you convince people to keep buying new devices, is that complicated if your supply chain is impacted by COVID-19? And, we're not all getting excited and going out and high-fiving and lining up outside the Apple store as, the images we've seen for so many years. But it is a different part of Apple's life as a company and in the cycle of selling iPhones. And, one of the things that does stand out to me looking at these numbers is on the services side. The fact that that part of the business, it's hard to move away from the fact that there's just a lot of devices that Apple sells, but more than $13 billion from the services business. I mean, this is not a small endeavor anymore. And so I think if we're all using Apple hardware and need more cloud access and people decide maybe they want to use Apple TV. I mean, think about the Disney story, right? So much not going right for Disney. The one thing that is working for Disney is that they had launched their own streaming service
about timing,
before
right?
COVID-19. So I think that part, maybe, if we talk about, we've all wondered, could we really, Apple wanted the narrative to be about the shift to services, but so many businesses are being impacted by COVID-19. It's just forcing a shift into so many different things. Okay, we're getting into it. All right, we're going all the way in on e-commerce. Well, in the case of Apple, maybe this actually is a defining moment in them retooling their business around all the stuff that you're doing on your iPad or your iPhone, as opposed to still getting excited about each new product unveil. It's still crucial short term, but long term maybe it's different.
That's services. That's a 17% increase, and it was a record, John, $13.35 billion. So big move up when it comes to the services. Wearables were up 23%. Mac sales were down almost 3%. iPad revenue was down 10%, and iPhone revenue dropped from 6.7% from a year ago. So, but services, as you said, big move up.
And so, John, go ahead.
No, and I think that this company, the more I think about them, guys, like, who is our new bellwether? We no longer kick off earnings season and look to General Electric.
Right.
I do think that this company, maybe more than any other, is our gauge of where things stand with COVID-19, because they have a brand that is one that people gravitate towards everywhere. So if there are signs that things can get back to normal somewhere, you would think Apple's going to be better positioned to at least get people into stores. So, I think what Tim Cook has said already to Bloomberg, and what he will continue to say on the call tonight, will be very, very important, because they've already had that experience before. Let's face it, before we were really talking in North America extensively about COVID-19, this company was seeing things on the ground in China and having to react to that, but now they're starting to get to the other side of this. So I think they actually are a very helpful gauge, truly, of how we are going to feel, especially because we still can't quite pinpoint this consumer part, how you and me are going to feel when we're given the opportunity to go back out there and go to an Apple store. Do you feel the confidence to go out and talk to somebody there and touch different products? I mean, we don't quite know when we'll get to that comfort zone yet, and so I think that you can get bits of information on that part of the story through businesses like Apple.
Well, and it's a great point, too, because as you alluded to and mentioned earlier, John, we also got a sense of the manufacturing side of this, too, and how workers are affected and how supply chains are affected all through Apple, especially given what we saw in China. Obviously, they don't have as much, or very little manufacturing here in the United States, but understanding how a company like that, which ultimately does sort of make a thing that people buy, has a lot of insights, as you say, that we're really looking for in this time. John Ehrlichman, thank you so much. Always good to catch up with you. Thanks for spending so much time with us on Amazon and on Apple. Really some really nice insights as we were digesting all of this in real time. John Ehrlichman, the host of BNN's The Opened, a partner to Bloomberg.
Yeah, Apple shares, by the way, they're little change now as we speak. And then, of course, we talked about Amazon. That's the other big earnings. Quick check on that share price in the after hours. It's had quite a run up this year, but the stock is now down about 4.6% in the after hours. But it's going to definitely shape what we see in the Friday trade. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Over to Ed Baxter we go out in San Francisco. Hi, Ed.
All right, Carol, I know we're monitoring the president's briefing today. No real new developments yet in the event regarding senior citizens at this point. He's been talking about what the administration has done and taking credit for it to this point. Very mixed planning in individual U.S. states today. This is 31 states plan to reopen in some partial fashion in the next few days. But Dr. Anthony Fauci says this will lead to more problems.
There's no doubt when you pull back, there will be cases. And what we need to do is make sure they have in place the capability of identifying, isolating, and contact tracing individuals.
And so in New York, they've endeavored to do that under the direction of the governor and Bloomberg LP founder Mike Bloomberg. They are starting a program of tracing. They say unlike anything ever before, where the goal will be to notify people of whether they have been in contact with a person who is COVID-19 positive. Meanwhile, in the state itself, Cuomo.
Hospitalizations are down. Good news. Net change in total hospitalizations down. Good news. Net change in intubations down. Good news. New COVID cases slightly down, 900.
So he says that it's really good news for the most part, but that they need to do more tracing. In California, the overall picture is stable with small rises in categories, and Governor Gavin Newsom is talking about child care.
Working partnership with our hospital system up and down the state, we were able to partner with them, partner with others to put 432 pop-up child care facilities, very strategically placed.
He says that will need to be done before people can get back to work. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
In-depth analysis.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £35 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going, because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
The Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Kevin Clark.
If Josh Allen became the 10th best quarterback in football this year, they'd probably win 14 games. Am I wrong about that?
No. If you as a quarterback can't win in the Bills' situation right now, they should not extend you. So many teams, Jets, do not have the information they need to evaluate their quarterbacks based on the teams they built around. The Bills do.
Listen and subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Search the Mina Kimes Show to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind. Giving up, I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team.
and I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn. Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, our writers fan out to report from across the city at the height of the coronavirus outbreak in New York.
I won't say it's business as usual, but, we still have responsibilities and we are handling everything. But, I'm not going to let COVID beat me.
That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Lots of earnings after the bell. Apple said quarterly revenue grew 1% in the midst of the global COVID-19 pandemic, driven by strong sales of digital services and wearable devices. It is also boosting its buyback program and lifting the dividend. Apple shares now lower by 1.5%. Amazon saw its profit shrink, predicted it may incur a loss in the current quarter, saying it's ramping up spending to keep logistics operations running smoothly during the coronavirus pandemic. Amazon shares slumping now by 5%. A down day on Wall Street, still the best April in roughly 3 decades. For the month of April, the S&P did gain 12.7%. Today, down 27 points, down 0.9%. The Dow down 288, down 1.2%. NASDAQ today fell by 0.3%. Gold down 1.8%, $16.83 the ounce. Crude surging 28%. West Texas Intermediate, $19.32 the barrel. The 10-year, the yield there, 0.64%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, Kevin Cirilli, he is Bloomberg News Chief Washington Correspondent of Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg TV, host of Bloomberg Sound On 99.1 in Washington, D.C. Well, he talked earlier with the U.S. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia. Now, they talked about the employment picture. Specifically, they started with today's latest jobless claims data. It was another eye-popping number. Let's listen in.
These unemployment filings are hard to see. We recognize that each one of those filings is a worker and potentially a family that is on hard times now out of work because of what we're trying to do to fight the coronavirus. And we're obviously doing all we can to help the states deliver unemployment benefits to them. It does appear that the filings have crested. The number is declining. We don't know the extent to which the filings that we reported today was about 3.9 million. It's a very large number. We don't know the extent to which that reflects a backlog. At the same time we're getting these filings, though, we are looking forward. States are beginning to reopen, and so we look at the prospect that within just weeks, some of these people who've been filing will be able to go back to work, which is a great thing. As you've said in previous interviews, the backlog is important for two reasons. First and foremost, from a data perspective, to make sure that we know precisely the number of Americans who are in need of this, but also for individuals to actually get the financial assistance that they need to sustain. Is there anything that Congress can do to speed along that process so that people can get that money? Well, one of the critical provisions of the CARES Act, which the president signed at the end of March, was a really extraordinary additional $600 a week in unemployment for Americans who were put out of work because of the coronavirus. We've been working just every day as closely as we can with the states to help get these payments out. The states have what have proved to be very old computer systems, and they were understaffed, and that has caused delays. We're doing all we can to help them. I've been in communication with members of Congress about getting that done too. So we'll continue to support them as they get those payments out. So just to follow up on that point, just from a basic standpoint, Congress might be able to provide maybe some technological infrastructure to help some of those states that are struggling to keep up? Well, something we've done is we've offered to put every state in touch with something called the U.S. Digital Service. It's a tech group, actually within the executive office Office of the President, and they've now been working with a number of states to help them with their computers. I did talk to one governor who he actually had to go to Latvia to find people who knew the computer system that his state had because it was that old. So I think as we come out of this pandemic, there will be an occasion to consider what we should be doing differently going forward, and I think that the states will want to enhance their systems.
And it just in terms of making sure that benefits haven't been expanded so much so that people are disincentivized to work. I mean, that's something that I think Washington wants to see, is for people to return to work. I've interviewed Republicans in the past several weeks who are concerned about that, that there might be a disincentive for people to return to work. What are your thoughts on that?
Unemployment is an important safety net, and it was important to the president
especially now.
Especially now. It was important to the president to provide an extra measure of support to Americans who are really making a sacrifice for our national health. That said, unemployment is never our first choice. Our first choice is that people be able to go to work, be able to go back to work. And as we reopen, people who've been receiving unemployment should go back to work. Obviously, you can't get unemployment if your employer is saying, hey, come back and please rejoin us, or nor can you quit a job in order to get unemployment. And we'll make sure that the states, so we've talked to them about the need to focus on that aspect of it. And actually, our Inspector General will be looking into the state's efforts to bring people back to work, which again is what we want.
So it's to that point, the expansion of these benefits is temporary for once COVID-19 is behind us.
Well, that's right. What Congress and the President provided in the CARES Act was an additional $600 a week in unemployment insurance. And by the way, it also was extended to the self-employed, to gig workers, Uber drivers, which, again, was unprecedented on this scale, but I think needed. But needed for a period of time. And it'll expire in July. And I think that matches up well with the time by which we would hope that so many people can be back on their jobs.
Every time we talk about jobless numbers and the unemployment rate pre-COVID-19, one of the conversations behind the scenes is about the way that the Labor Department is able to assess data and to assess, as you mentioned, the gig economy as well as internet sales and whatnot. Is that I know this has been something that you've done since one of the things that your team has been working on since you assumed this position. Can you just explain that to our audience about how important that modernization of data for these numbers is to you, and especially in this moment?
Well, one part of the Labor Department, actually a pretty large agency in the department, is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Right. And that's the agency that compiles the data we put out, for example, every month about what the unemployment rate is. We'll be doing that on May 8th. It's an important agency, as you say, because it gives us a gauge on our economy, which until weeks ago was just absolutely roaring. And let me just remind people of that as hard as it is to see these unemployment numbers, we came about this period of unemployment by a very different path than, say, in the Great Recession, which gives me hope for a very different way out, a quicker way out. But data will be important to that. And I have had discussions with the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics about refinements and challenges to data gathering that are posed during the pandemic. And we're focused on making sure that we're able to continue to collect that data.
And that was Kevin Cirilli speaking to the Labor Secretary, the U.S. Secretary of Labor. Carol, a key day for Secretary Scalia looking at this number. I mean, I think it bears repeating that were it not for the previous several weeks, this week would be the record. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just sort of bananas to think about that context.
I have to say, I'm getting ready for a Bloomberg Breakaway event tomorrow. It's all about leadership, the CEO event. I'll be talking with Alan Jope of Unilever, and then two crisis and PR experts. But what's interesting is we've got a chart that just shows unemployment across the country, and it's just staggering the amount of people that are applying for benefits. I get it, the percentage of workforce that is. I totally get it logically. But when you see those numbers and you realize how many people are hurting, that's a big deal. And, speaking of hurting, we see Texas just reporting its deadliest COVID-19 day since the pandemic began. So the virus continues to move around the country and hit our states very, very hard.
Right. And coming up after this, you're going to hear Sound On. If you are in the D.C. area, you can hear more of Kevin Cirilli's interview. We're also going to be talking about labor with Tom Colicchio, noted chef. He's going to be along with us in the back half of the next hour. So as I mentioned, if you are listening in New York and San Francisco, stick with us here on Bloomberg Business Week. If you're listening to 99.1 in D.C., Sound On. That's coming up next.
Yes, it is. And we're also going to catch up with the president and CEO of Subaru of America. The car industry, auto industry, also hard hit by the virus. So I'm curious about what life looks like after. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Tom Keene.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of text messages containing links. They may appear to be from legitimate senders like the government, a bank or a delivery company, but never enter your online banking information or personal details after clicking on a link.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn. 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Lots of earnings after the bell. Amazon saw its profit shrink, predicted it may incur a loss in the current quarter, saying it's ramping up spending to keep logistics operations running smoothly during the coronavirus pandemic. Amazon shares, they're lower now by 5.2%. Apple said quarterly revenue grew 1% in the midst of the global COVID-19 pandemic, driven by strong sales of digital services and wearable devices. The company did not issue a forecast for the first time in more than a decade. However, CEO Tim Cook said Apple saw, quote, a pickup in the second half of April after, quote, a very depressed period in late March and early April. Apple is also increasing its share buyback plan by $50 billion and boosting the dividend. Apple shares lower now by 1.5%. One more closely watched report after the bell. Gilead Sciences posted stronger than forecast results, but the drug maker said there is significant uncertainty
about how COVID-19 will affect its business, even though its experimental treatment for the disease appears heading toward a swift U.S. authorization. Gilead Sciences shares down now after hours by 1.3%. Today, they did advance by roughly 1%. The European Central Bank intensified its response to the coronavirus crisis by cutting the cost of funding for banks while urging politicians to provide more fiscal support. Here's ECB President Christine Lagarde from her statement.
Given the high uncertainty surrounding the ultimate extent of the economic fallout, growth scenarios produced by ECB staff suggest that euro area GDP could fall by between 5 and 12% this year.
And this headline to pass along from the Bloomberg Professional Service. The Justice Department sees early fraud signs in that SBO loan flurry. Clearly a developing story. Stay with Bloomberg. We'll have more for that, more on coming up right here on a Bloomberg Business Week. After earnings today, we did see Tesla earnings slump down today by 2.3%, and also after earnings, eBay up today by 2%. The Dow, the S&P, and Nasdaq all lower. S&P down 27, a drop of 0.9%. The Dow down 288, down 1.2%. Nasdaq down 25, a drop there of 0.3%. By the way, for the S&P, best April in about 3 decades. 10-year yield 0.63%. Gold down 0.3%. 16.81 the ounce. Crude surging 26.7% to 19.09 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and when we think about the different industries, and every industry obviously has been affected by this crisis, we certainly think about the auto industry. So we're especially glad to have Tom Dahl with us. He is the president and CEO of Subaru of America, joining us on the phone from Camden, New Jersey. Tom, first of all, thanks so much for joining us, and I trust all is well with you, your family, and your team.
Yeah, Jason, thanks so much. Doing well.
Good. That's good to hear. What's the car business like right now? How would you describe it?
Well, I would say, obviously, since the Ides of March, right, March 15th, it's kind of been very difficult. Although I would say the last 10 to 12 days of the month, our business has improved a little bit because retailers are now adjusting to maybe doing more sales online or adjusting to how they have to handle and treat customers. So it's improved quite a bit, I would say, over the last 10 to 12 days of the month.
Interesting. That's sort of like what we heard from Tim Cook
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Just a little bit ago.
So how much of an improvement and what are your expectations for life after virus, especially, Tom, if the economy doesn't come back like some predict? Because we're all not expecting necessarily a V-shaped recovery. As our Mike McKee, who covers the global economy, said, it's going to be, people are talking more like a Nike swoosh.
Right. Yeah, I think they're right. I think in terms, don't get me wrong, when we say it's better, it's relatively better. From the beginning of the month. Beginning of the month, we thought we were going to be down probably somewhere around 65%. It looks like we're still going to be down, but not quite as bad as that, and hopefully less than 50% when we finally get the numbers in at the close of business today. I agree with you 100% that this is going to be a little bit longer recovery than people thought, only because of the depth of it. Remember, we can say we're going to start up our factories, in which they're supposed to start up on May the 11th, but we're dependent on our suppliers to be able to make sure that we've got the parts to be able to produce the cars in the volumes that we need them to produce in. The other issue that's going to happen in the car business, I believe, is so many of the other manufacturers have so much inventory that have to be disposed of, and what's been happening in the fleet and rental car markets is something that we have to pay attention to, because those cars ultimately have to be disposed of in the marketplace as well. So it's going to be interesting when the market finally does open up and we see what happens in terms of the competitive actions by some of the competitors.
So let's unpack that a little bit, Tom, if we can, because I want to take you back to something you said a minute ago about the supply chain, because we were talking about this as it relates to Apple and many other companies. You're a global company, obviously, and cars are complicated. I don't have to tell you that. You know it much better than we do. What have you seen so far in terms of the pain points and how you're able to deal with them when it comes to the supply chain?
It's fascinating because, I've been around a long time at our company and around the car industry.
You go back to 1982 at the company, is that right?
I do, yes. I've been around. I'm dating myself, right?
You've seen some things.
I've seen a lot. I'll tell you what, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
I've seen my share of recessions, and this is completely different because believe me when I tell you, it just shut down. You don't just simply close an automobile manufacturing plant for 9 weeks and then just expect it to start right back up again. The same thing with our suppliers. You just don't shut them down for that length of a period of time and not expect there's going to be some hiccups once the factories start to get moving again. And I think we have to plan for that as we begin to bring up our production capacity. It's going to be a little bit of a while, I think, before we get back to the levels of production that we had seen prior to the shutdown. But it's going to be interesting to see how it all comes together. I know our folks are working very hard to make it happen.
Tom, I am curious, what worries you more? What the economy looks like and, the confidence that consumers have to go out there and hopefully have jobs that they can buy cars? Or is it more the logistics of getting the suppliers and everything back up and running? What worries you more?
The economy. Well, we'll get the suppliers all figured out. They know what they're doing, and our production engineers are fantastic. They'll get the factories back up and running. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the long-term impact that this might have on consumers and their willingness to buy and spend on important things like a car and expensive things like a car or a home. Right? I mean, great news right now, right? Mortgage interest rates, you probably reported this earlier, are down to the lowest level ever, right?
Right.
But people aren't. But the housing market's in the tank. People need to have some stability before they're going to be willing to go back out there. So how quickly can jobs be added back into the economy and we get back to the point where people now feel more comfortable?
Right. Well, and the auto industry, as you well know, incentives have often been a part of it. Does that make a difference in this kind of environment, or what we perceive will be the economic environment on the other side of this?
Well, there's no question that the demand curve has shifted down dramatically. Before the shutdown, we were probably at a 16.8 to 17 million unit sales projection for this calendar year. Now everybody thinks, and myself included, that we're going to be somewhere between 13 and 14 million vehicles for the year. So there's been a big shift, and up until that point, as you know, production was being done to support that. So when you come out of this thing, it's definitely going to be a buyer's market. And manufacturers are going to try to figure out how they can get that market share amongst themselves in that much smaller market. And there probably are going to be significant levels of incentives that are going to be out there once it opens up. We have to be smart in how we play in that game because we don't have the resources that a lot of the other manufacturers have because of our size. We have to do things a little bit differently.
Right. Well, and I feel like everybody's going to be doing things differently because you and your competitors don't or won't have the luxury or certainly the way of doing business before of sort of bringing people into the showroom and showing it off at least as much as possible. It's all going to be different. At least that's what it feels like. All right, Tom Dahl, stick with us. We're going to continue our conversation in just a few minutes. Tom is the president and chief executive officer of Subaru of America, joining us on the phone from Camden, New Jersey. I want to talk with him about the future of cars, really, because sort of like retail, this is an industry that already was at an inflection point in many ways and already being disrupted. So what does this do to that, Carol?
Yeah, and I want to talk to him about workers, his workers. And I really do think we're getting to a bigger picture. What's the responsibility of companies to society and to its workers specifically? This on a day when a headline's just crossing the Bloomberg, U.S. Steel sees 2,700 jobs affected due to plant shutdown. So monitoring certainly the labor situation ongoing. All right, let's get another check on world and national news headlines. Back over to Ed Baxter we go in San Francisco. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Jason. The Trump administration is announcing money to help fund nursing home monitoring.
CMS is providing states with $81 million from the CARES Act to increase their inspections of nursing homes at this very critical time.
Meanwhile, at least 31 states are planning on some kind of partial opening in the next few days. And Dr. Anthony Fauci on NBC says he hopes they are not rushing it.
But you have to have the core principles of the guidelines. You can't just leap over things and get into a situation where you're really tempting a rebound. That's the thing I get concerned about. I hope They don't do that.
And Dr. Fauci also said a vaccine could be ready by January. New Jersey has a reminder things are not over, reporting the most deaths on record for one day, 460. Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing a large-scale plan to trace all coronavirus cases on a scale never used before to be able to notify people that they have been in contact with a patient. The effort is being led by Bloomberg LP founder Mike Bloomberg. Meanwhile, Governor Andrew Cuomo says there'll be a full-scale cleaning of the subway system.
Just think about it. The entire public transit system in downstate New York will be disinfected every 24 hours.
And in California, Governor Gavin Newsom says people at Orange County beaches did not adhere to the separation policies.
We're going to have a temporary pause on the beaches down there, state and local beaches. We want to work very closely with local elected officials, and we're committed to doing that. And if we can get some framework and guidelines to get this right, we can reopen very, very quickly.
He also says the state is in the process of putting up pop-up child care centers. I'm Ed Baxter.
Whether it's another day of market misery, pandemic emergency, or both, one thing will still go right.
We have the latest world and national news.
Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager bring you the most accurate coverage.
The White House is looking for additional ways to support the economy.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
We continue to watch equities around the world.
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenge?
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be vigilant for suspicious calls that appear to be from your bank, the police, or the government. Remember, neither Santander, the police, or any other organisation will ask you to move or withdraw money for security reasons.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
If you've used TuneIn much, you probably already know how to favorite your top stations and podcasts for quick access. But did you know you can organize your favorites too? Under your favorites page on the TuneIn app, hold and drag the stations to arrange the order to your liking.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
The sports world is full of inspirational stories of heroic figures. It also has its fair share of shady characters. For detailed retellings of the darkest sagas in sports, explore TuneIn's documentary podcasts, like 30 for 30's The Sterling Affairs, about the scandalous life and times of the former Clippers owner, Donald Sterling, and Gladiator, which follows Aaron Hernandez's transformation from Super Bowl star to convicted murderer. For these and more, search sports documentaries on the TuneIn app. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right